Power Marketing
There we go.
Administration.
Sorry.
Does anybody really know about the Power Marketing
OBS is
Administration?
the streaming software I
Small
use to
thing.
like do all the cameras
Over
and the
the years,
different
the Congressional
things.
Budget Office started scoring the program differently than the Senate had agreed to.
But he just
in
caved.
2000.
How is he giving that speech when he just caved on the fucking
2024,
on the
Budget Chair
tax
me,
thing?
and the
Which
House
was
Budget
annoying,
Chair,
by the way.
Jody Arrington, on a bipartisan basis, invoked this section to have CBO return to the original Senate agreement and not the variation that they had created. This is what Section 312 has been used for, to resolve technical ambiguity to advance a bipartisan appropriation deal, not to create Senate floor fakery belied by the $5 trillion debt limit hike that Republicans are obliged to pass to make good
By $5 trillion.
on
Jesus.
this huge billionaire blowout that we're forcing through the Senate floor now. I yield the floor.
Jesus.
I am using and yielding time off the bill.
Without objection?
Okay, thank you very, very much. So, the debate and eventual voting on the big, beautiful bill has begun. Hallelujah. It's taken a while for us to get here. We're going to have a debate worthy of a great country. We'll have what they think and what we think, and we're going to vote on this bill in the coming days, and I'm excited about that. I've worked a long time with my colleagues to get to where we are today, so to the American people. The debate is beginning right now regarding the big, beautiful bill, and I'll tell you why that's good news for you, but let me take a little bit of time to talk about current policy versus current law. I know everybody's on the edge of their seat at home, but here's what I would tell you about numbers and budget chairmen. I'm not the first budget chairman. There have been those who came before me.
And none of them did this
in
bullshit.
2008, Chairman Kent Conrad, a really nice guy from North Dakota, used a new baseline in the budget so he could get the farm bill in the budget. And Jared Gregg, really smart guy, former budget chairman, said the chairman of the budget committee declared the new baseline under a new budget. The budget chairman has a right to do that.
Oh, hi,
That's
Remy.
what I'm doing. I'm setting the numbers. The parliamentarian said,
Surviving
that's
another
my
month,
job
Remy.
as budget chairman. The resolution we're operating under to get us here, we voted to make that the case. So we're not doing anything sneaky. We actually voted to give me the authority to do this, and it passed. But again, I'm not the first chairman to change a baseline for different reasons. One, to get the farm bill in, and another occasion, Senator Sanders changed the baseline in 2022 when he was budget chairman under budget reconciliation to issue a budget rule allowing the numbers to change to get more money for Head Start. So Senator Sanders, as budget chairman, directed a new rule be written
Describe
to get
the
more
rule.
money for Head Start.
Describe the
So
rule.
don't tell me you've never done this before in terms of changing the baseline as budget chairman.
They
Budget
literally,
chairman
they are
under
literally
212
pretending.
Sets the baseline.
They're
This
literally
is been
adding $5
acknowledged
trillion
by
to the debt
Republicans
limit
and
because they're
Democrats.
adding nearly
The
$5
baseline
trillion
has
to the
changed in the past
fucking
based on the budget
deficit.
committee chairman's desire, one to get a farm bill in, and the other to change the numbers, a new rule to get Head Start spending. So this has been done before, but I'll be the first
Yeah, I
to
agree,
say
Ray.
that what we're doing here is historic in a good way. In 2017, we passed the Trump tax cuts. They're due to expire in December. Why is that? Before I got here, current law was the way to score or implement tax policy. After 10 years, the tax cuts expired, current law. As budget chairman, I've decided to use current policy when it comes to cutting taxes. If you use current policy, they never expire. So the policies that were created in 2017 would not end in December. They would continue.
Till
And that's a
they're in
good
the
thing for
fucking
the
ground,
American
Michelle.
people. That's a good thing for the economy because it gives you certainty. So I made a decision as budget chairman, working with my colleagues, to look at tax cuts, something important for the country, to give
Tax cuts
certainty
for
to
the
businesses
rich, guys.
and individuals, and make sure after 10 years
How
they
are
don't
these people so
arbitrarily go
fucking
away and have a
disgusting?
cliff.
I just can't.
So I made that
I
decision. My colleagues backed me
fucking
up,
can't.
and that's in the
How can you be
budget
so
resolution
disgusting
governing
as a
the
human?
debate that we're here today. So why do we want to make the tax cuts permanent? Because if they
Yeah, why the
expire in
fuck would you?
December, the average family of 4 in South Carolina will have a $1,700 increase. I don't want that, and I bet you people at home don't want that.
Jesus.
So we have to deal with that. That
Aver-
cliff
the
is
average
coming.
brought up by all the
And not
fucking
only do I
billionaires,
wanna
right?
avoid that cliff, I don't want to put us in that position ever again. So the tax cuts have generated more revenue for the government than CBO estimated in 2017. The one thing about our friends at CBO, I appreciate all your hard work. You've worked really hard. When it comes to taxing, they always get it wrong about how much revenue to be collected. So when
They
you look
literally
at
always
the
underestimate how
years
much
that
you're gonna
passed
fucking
in
cost the country,
2017,
dude.
on the corporate side, on the individual side, the revenue to the government has actually grown because of those tax cuts, and that's a good thing.
No, it hasn't.
Cutting
Why are you
taxes
fucking
means more money
lying?
for you and
The
your
revenue
family.
to the fucking government
Our
has
friends on the
grown
other
because of
side,
tax
if you're
cuts. What
waiting
is your
on them to cut your
How
taxes,
fucking
you're gonna
stupid
die
do you
waiting.
think we are, dude?
So they're never going to do it. Why are we doing it? Because
Why-
they won't do it. We could never get 60 votes for this.
Yeah, because
So
it's
the bottom
fucking
line is
garbage.
We're going to make these tax cuts permanent, and that's a good thing for businesses. Expensing will be allowed so you can invest and grow in your business. You can buy new equipment. You can write it off sooner, and that will get more activity in the economy. It's not me saying that. There's a track record, Mr. President. You've been in business. This stuff works. They don't like it, but it works. If you're in business,
Yeah, it
and
works
the
for
tax code
Bezos.
encourages you to invest in your business, you will.
It works for
This
Bezos.
stuff
Exactly.
literally
Doesn't work for
works.
you. Doesn't work for
And
me.
they hate it because it's money that could have gone to the government went back into the economy. What they don't realize, actually, the government gets more money. They just keep spending it. And we could do better on the spending side. And
If the
we're
government
going
is
to do
getting
better
more
on the
money because you're
spending
putting all
side.
that money into the
So,
economy, then
This
there's
bill
less
makes
money
the
in the economy
2017
total, right?
Tax cuts permanent.
Jesus.
It avoids a tax
Hi, Animal.
increase for your family that's coming in December if we don't act now. It secures
I think
the
Musk
border.
is claiming to be against the bill because Doge is a fucking failure,
One of
and
the
he has to
reasons that
blame
more of
someone
us
for the fact
than
that
our
the budget's
Democratic
about to
friends
explode
is how you
again.
screwed the country up for the last 4 years. We went from
Yeah,
secure borders
I think so,
to
Arctic.
completely open borders, absolute chaos.
Exactly.
And
Bankruptcy.
that's why we're winning and you're losing. And you want to take us back to open borders. We're not going. We're not going back to your policies
Why is
that
this
allowed
not working?
8.3 million encounters at the border, 1.7 million gotaways, chaos to cities and communities. We're not going back to the policies that led to Laken Riley's murder in Georgia.
Oh, you don't give a fuck about
The
Laken
man
Riley.
convicted for murdering her was captured several times, released because there was no detention space to hold him in Texas, and he left.
Yeah,
a
it's
free
about
man,
budget.
Went to Georgia and killed this lady. That's happened too many times, and it's going to stop. Now, what are we doing to secure the border? We went from lawless borders to the most secure borders in 6 months because of President Trump. President Trump, you should be exceedingly
Yeah,
proud.
literally, they only bring up
Holman,
her case.
the
Why do you
whole
think that
team,
is? Why do you
you've
think that
locked
is?
that border down, but we want to do it in a way that it'll stay locked down for the president after you and beyond. So how do we secure
Her
the
family
gains
started
made
fucking
by
showing
President
up at
Trump and
photo
his
ops
team?
for them. I don't give a fuck,
We're going
dude.
to, in this bill, hire more ICE agents.
They like
to
showed up
expedite the removal of
and
people
at
that
the
shouldn't
like
be here,
inauguration and
particularly
shit, or not the
criminal elements,
inauguration,
people
the
that are dangerous.
State of the Union, whatever
We're
that bullshit
gonna
was.
finish the wall.
Well,
Not
addressed
one
to the nation,
Democrat,
technically not a
maybe
State of the
one,
Union because it was the first year.
No way would get 60 votes to hire more ICE agents.
Right?
No way
Why?
we would get Democratic help
It's
to
almost like
finish the
democracy.
wall. And we're going to go from
Works the way it does.
40,000 detention beds to 125,000. This secure the border is about $175 billion. New technology along the border, fiber cable, so we don't go back to the days of open borders. This is in the
Elon
bill.
Musk
For
vows
those
to
of you
primary
who
every
voted for
Republican who
us
votes for Trump's big
and
beautiful
President
bill.
Trump secured the
Fuck
border,
yeah.
we're delivering through this bill. And they would never do what we're doing. I'll be the first to admit.
He'll forget
when
by
it
the
comes to
time the
securing
midterms roll
border,
around, but
they're
we'll
never
see
gonna
who
do what we're
who they're
doing.
more afraid
We're
of
hiring more
tonight.
ICE agents. We're finishing the wall. And we're increasing more detention beds so we don't let people out that can go and murder. I'm very proud of this. I wrote this.
Ivy.
This is money well spent. This will secure that border in perpetuity.
So you acknowledge it's
President
spent
Trump,
money.
This is your plan. It is in our bill. Well done. To my friends on the other side, you had your chance and you screwed it up big time. And that's why we're in charge. Revitalize our military. The world is a dangerous place.
But what's funny is
We
like
have
he keeps saying that. He
$150
keeps saying you
in
screwed
this
it
bill
up.
to help build
You
out
you
the
messed
Golden
up your
Dome,
chance, screwed it up
to
big
help
time, and that's why
improve
we're
the
in
quality of
charge.
life of men
And
women
like
serving the
I'd love to
military by
know if
improving
that
their barracks
logic
and housing.
applies to why
They need the
Trump
money
lost the last fucking election. You know,
weapons.
after the
This
last
is
fucking
so
tax bill that
we
they
didn't have to get
passed.
extorted to
So
buy
you
a
guys
bunch of
must have
butter
fucked it up.
to get $150 billion.
They know they did, by the way. They also
We
set it up
reduced
so that
government
they always set it up so
spending
the benefits
over a
expire
decade
right as
by
Dems come into power
1.6
and all the fucking negatives hit right as Dems come into power. It's like,
We're running deficits, national debt of $37 trillion. So what have we done here? In the last 5 years, from 2020 basically to now, Medicaid has grown by 50%. So what's happened is that Medicaid
Maybe
was originally
everyone's
intended
fucking poor.
for children and poor families.
And maybe
children,
there are more poor families because you
people who
keep
were
fucking
disabled and couldn't
plunging them
work
into poverty.
provide health care. Count me in for that, makes a lot of sense. Along comes
Sounds like there are
President Obama.
more
He
families in
expands
poverty,
Medicaid
and that's why more
to
people are on
include
Medicaid.
able-bodied adults for the first time. And what he did was
It's a
he
big billionaire bill.
incentivized states to include these people in Medicaid. For every new able-bodied adult,
Right,
you get
Ivy?
90% of the cost from the federal government, 10% from the states, and Medicaid has grown 50%, is going to take over Medicare because of what President Obama did. So what are we going to do? We're going to try to deal with that in a responsible way. What about this idea? If you're not a child, if you're not disabled, you're able-bodied, and you don't have any children under 14, we're going to
Under
have
14.
a 20-hour-a-week work requirement for you to stay
Under
on
14.
Medicaid. That's a good thing. It's a good thing for the individual.
Hey, guess
mom
what?
to
You
be
know
working.
that
It's a good thing for the
over
taxpayer for them to be
86%,
working.
I believe it
But
is, of
that
people who
seems to be
receive
a crime on the other
benefits
side
like
to
SNAP,
ask somebody to work
who have an
and work.
able-bodied adult in the
How many
family,
people out there listening to
work.
this? I don't know how many you are, but are you
They
working
work.
every day? Are you
Yeah,
going to
Naps.
work with
The
kids?
problem with that fucking logic
people do
is
that,
that
by the
it
way.
like it actually
So
fucks with
one of
like
the
hourly
reforms in this
workers.
bill is to
It fucks with
introduce a
hourly
work
workers. So
requirement
for example,
to the
like
additional
I am a
population
freelancer,
that
right?
President
And I
Obama
make
put on
I make a lot of
Medicaid
money when I'm working.
that was never intended
But
on the
some
original
weeks I
purpose
don't
of
work at
Medicaid.
all.
This work requirement's going to save
I
a
didn't work
bunch
at
of
all this
money.
past week. I mean, I worked on TikTok
Finally,
shit,
we're
but I wasn't on
addressing the
set,
biggest
so I
scam
wasn't
I've
making any
seen
money.
in a very long
Now,
time.
that's okay for me
Somewhere
because I make
along the
enough
line,
money to
somebody
stay
figured
afloat,
out
whatever. But
that
there's a shit ton of fucking
at the
hourly
state
workers,
level,
blue collar
that
workers,
if you tax
who like
doctors and
1 week
hospitals and
don't
medical
make the fucking
providers
20 hours,
on the funds they get,
and then
to
they're
take
shit out of
that
fucking luck.
revenue, you can actually get more Medicaid money.
Oh, Jesus.
This is a money laundering scheme. It needs to come to an end as we know it. States have gone up to 6%
And
of
in
a
work
provider
one?
tax. They take that tax revenue.
What do you mean?
And they use it to get more money from the federal government. The hospitals and doctors don't lose. They get the money back. The state doesn't lose. They get more money. The only group that loses is the federal government.
I just don't know
and
why
we're
you
deep,
hate
deep
poor
in
people
debt.
so much.
So we're going to reform
Like,
the
you just
provider
fucking, you
tax
must be,
system that's
like, I hope
often
you're wealthy
is
as fuck.
is
Otherwise, like,
abusive.
why do you fucking help your,
Very
or hate your
abusive.
fucking neighbors and shit? My
As to
God.
Medicaid.
Also, why are you
It's
just such a
on
bad
growth
fucking person?
trajectory that will overtake Medicare. Now is the time to put common sense reform in place, not only to slow the growth, and we're not talking about cutting Medicaid, we're slowing the growth, but try to create some
Yeah, you're just
sense of
cutting
fiscal responsibility.
$900 billion
So,
of it
two-
for people.
Our chairman.
Mr. President,
Senator from California.
I have a motion to
I
connect the desk.
I don't just work
Clerk will
online.
report.
The Senator from
Ivy, I work
California,
on
Mr.
set
Schiff,
as well.
moves to commit the bill H.R. 1 to the Committee on Agriculture.
But
New
I've
Ask
Tax
that
been-
further reading of the motion be dispensed with.
I've been in the film industry
objection.
since I was in college.
Mr. President, my motion
Really?
is simple. It will
But most
prevent
of it is on
families with
set.
kids under
I mean,
12 from
for me
losing
now,
food
because I
assistance under the
produce,
bill. It's bad enough we're
I do a
borrowing
lot of
money,
work
trillions
from
of
home,
dollars from our
like
kids
the
and
pre-production and
grandkids
stuff. It's all the
to pay
boring
for
shit,
tax
but
cuts for
that's
rich
like
people, but it is worse still
basically because
that
I'm
we
at the top
leave
of the fucking
families
food
hungry today.
pyramid for
I reserve
that.
the balance of my time.
Like it takes a while to
President,
get there.
Senator from Arkansas.
I rise in opposition
But
to the
most
motion
of
raised by
my life
colleague
working in
from
film, my
California.
boyfriend still works
The
like
agricultural
in
title
film
of
as
this bill takes
you know,
a
camera
practical
team. He's
approach
on set
to improve SNAP
almost every single
by
day
reducing
that he
waste,
works. But some weeks he doesn't work. Like he's not going
enhancing
to work this week.
accountability, and encouraging recipients to move towards self-reliance through work.
No,
and
it's not the
training.
people in office.
SNAP
Like
spending has nearly doubled since 2018,
they just don't give a
putting
fuck.
this vital program on an unsustainable path wrought with mismanagement.
I think they just don't. I don't think
and
it's.
waste.
I don't think it's that they don't
SNAP
know. I
is
think they
long
just
overdue
genuinely
for
don't give a
change.
fuck.
This
They
program is
genuinely don't
developed
give a
and
fuck.
reviewing success as enrolling more
Studies show
individuals
that
to be
psychopathy
dependent
is far
on
more
government
prevalent on the fucking
assistance.
right.
This
The right
motion would
lacks
jeopardize the
empathy.
ability for the
The
Senate
right is made up
to
of
reach
bad fucking
reconciliation
people.
instructions
You're just bad
and
people.
deliver the president's
Period.
agenda to the American people. I urge my colleagues to vote no.
Spending my time feeding hungry kids is not waste. And if we have to send this bill back to committee to fix it. and bring
Genuinely
it
don't
back so
understand how
kids
it's
can get
fucking
fed,
wasteful
we
to make
should
sure
do
that
it.
people get
This
like
bill is
medical
gonna
care
take
and children
lunches
don't
out
go
of
hungry.
School cafeterias.
You're just shitty
It's gonna
fucking
mean hungry
people.
Families, you can't pick a number like 200 billion out of thin air and say you could take that money for tax cuts and not leave a lot of American kids hungry. I urge an aye vote.
The question is on the motion.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Is there sufficient second? There appears to be. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Elsa Brooks, Ms. Baldwin,
The country under government-run health care, and the government reimbursement is higher for an able-bodied person than it is for a poor child or a disabled person. And we're going to stop that because that's not fair. It's not fair to the taxpayer, and it's not fair to the population that we're trying to help. So we're going to control spending in a common sense way. We're going to revitalize our military at a time of great need. We're going to secure the border, and we're going to make the tax cuts that expire in December permanent so we don't have to deal with this every 10 years. It's a big, beautiful bill if you believe in cutting people's taxes, securing the border, having a strong military, and controlling government spending. It is a nightmare, this bill, for those who want to raise taxes, who want open borders, who want a weak military, and never want to control one dime of federal spending. This bill is your nightmare if you're for open borders. This bill is your nightmare if you want the government to grow without any limitation. This bill is your nightmare if you want a weak military, because it's going to give us a stronger military. So why do we have this debate? That's what they, through years of effort, have done. The military is always the last thing that gets funded when they're in charge. When they're in charge, you have no border. Completely broken, millions of people running through our country lawless. When they're in charge, there is no limit to growing the government. They entice everybody to grow the government. And when they're in charge, they're never going to cut your taxes in any meaningful way. The tax rates since 2017, the top rate has been 37. If these tax cuts expire, your taxes, if you're a family of four, will go up by $1,700. And we'll go back to the 39.6 rate. Here's a question for the country. How much should the federal government take of anybody's income? What's a fair share? 37% seems pretty damn fair to me. Over a third of what you make, and that doesn't count state and local taxes. The number they would pick is probably a 90. So is 37% fair? I think yes. Most Americans think 25% is fair. You know, Jesus wants 10%. There is no number they won't embrace. So somewhere between 90 and 10, 37 is fair. This is not rewarding the wealthy. It's creating a number that makes sense. 37% going to the federal government is a fair share. It's over a third of what you make. And that doesn't count state and local taxes. This has been long, it's been hard, but we're about done. In a couple of days, we're going to pass the one big, beautiful bill. President Trump's going to sign it. Mike Crapo and his staff deserve at least one day off. I cannot thank you enough for what you and your team have done. To my budgeteers, you have been terrific. You have worked really hard. To CBO and Joint Tax and all these people, hats off to your efforts to get us a quality product. To all of my colleagues who've rowed the boat with us, we're about to reach the shore. And when this boat comes ashore, every family in America can have a sigh of relief. Your taxes will not go up this December. You'll get a Christmas present of not having a tax increase. To those who've been yearning for a secure border, it will be secure. To those men and women in uniform, you're going to get some help and you desperately need it. And to those who think we should do something about the government's growth in a common sense way, we've achieved that. I am very proud of this bill. I'm very proud of President Trump. I'm very proud of the Republican team that has gotten us to this point. And to my Democratic colleagues, we'll work together where we can. But nobody over here ever expects you to do anything about the border because you've proven you can't. Nobody over here believes you're ever going to reduce the size of government because you don't want to. So the bottom line is we're about to make history, Mr. President. This is your first term. I don't know what comes later for you. I hope you're here a long time. If that's what you want to be, you're a great senator. You're a good businessman. You've made a real success story. Family from Columbia. You've created a lot of job opportunity. I doubt if you'll ever do anything more important than this. Senator Crapo, you've been here a while. You're one of the smartest guys I've ever met. Everything you've done all your life has led to this moment.
No, they're still
This is what
talking
you were
about it.
built to do.
Alex.
This is what you were meant to do.
It's
You're the
not.
right
It's not a
man
fucking
at the
deficit
right
reduction.
time
They're lying to you. They're
to do
adding
what
$4
this
trillion to
country
the deficit.
desperately needs to stay on track to be safe and prosperous. To all my colleagues who are going to vote for this bill, you should be
They're
proud,
lying to you.
and
Just
you
a
should
FYI.
talk about it. because it's going to make us all safer and it's going to make us all
No, it's
more
not.
prosperous.
Yeah, you guys
being
maybe.
budget chairman
I'm sure
is
it's gonna
a
make you
work.
more prosperous. I'm sure that fucking cash is burning a hole in your pocket,
This
man.
is not my
I
thing
get
at
it,
all,
Lindsay. You're excited to
but I
go
have really
spend
gotten into it.
those fucking
I've
stacks
learned
you
a
got
lot thanks to
handed
my
by
colleagues,
Daddy
and I'm
Bezos.
proud to have the honor of being
Just for
budget
lying in our
chairman
faces.
at a time I think it matters the most. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the following staff members from my staff and from Senator Merkley's staff be given all access floor passes for the consideration of the bill. Caitlin Wilson, Lillian Meadows, Scott Graber, Walker Turlock, Taylor Reedy, Democratic staff Mike Jones, Melissa Pistner, Josh Smith, and Tyler Evilsler. Tyler, Evilsizer. I ask that
I'm hungry.
unanimous consent.
Without objection.
With that, I will yield to my good friend from Idaho.
You don't have any fucking friends, Lindsay. Stop lying. No one likes you.
Oh, wait a minute.
That's right. You forgot your friend's name because you had to.
That the use of
Make it up.
calculators, whatever they are, be permitted on the floor of the Senate during consideration of the bill.
Without objection.
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Idaho.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first of all, let me thank my colleague from South Carolina, Senator Graham, for his very
Yep.
kind words. I return the same kind of compliments to him for his great work in helping to build this bill and get us moved to this point. I'm going to make just a few remarks right now in response
Should I
to
get
some
the
of
munchies?
the allegations and mischaracterizations that my colleagues on the other side have made about how this bill has been structured in terms of its evaluation and scoring. And then later, I'm going to come and give a much longer speech, sorry, sir, on the bill itself. But the things that were said this morning just have to be responded to. First of all, it is said that the reason
I know,
that we
Amber. The
are
problem is,
going to
like,
increase the debt
Dems
ceiling
are
in the
just,
bill is
Dems
because
are
we
too,
spending so much
like,
money and driving the deficit.
polite, and they're never
But
gonna
first of
say,
all, our
you
bill
fucking
drives the
deserve it,
deficit
you
down,
fucking
not
red
up. And
voters.
secondly,
They're
the
never
reason
gonna
we are
say it.
dealing with the debt
Because
ceiling in the
technically,
bill
here's the thing.
is because
I
under the
struggle with
previous
it. I'm like, I'm just so
administration's
pissed in
operations,
general.
the debt
I'm
ceiling has
existentially
already been breached.
furious, which is
It
why
was
I've
breached
tipped
on
into this
January
thing.
2nd.
But every time I do it, it like
And we
hurts
are
me because I'm
limping
like,
along
I
with
don't think anyone fucking deserves this shit.
extraordinary
I don't think
measures
anyone
is what we
deserves to
call
get
them
fucked
here
over
in
by the government.
Washington,
Even people
to try to
I
keep the
really,
government funded
really,
until
really
Congress
disagree
can
with
extend
on the
the
big
debt
stuff.
ceiling.
But if
This has
anyone,
nothing to do
like,
with
but like
President
part
Trump.
of
It
it is
happened
also
before
like,
he even
okay,
was
you're
sworn into
fucking everyone
office.
over.
It
Like
has
we're
nothing to
we're
do
stuck in
with
here
this
with you
bill. It has to do
fuckwits.
with the profligate
Like,
spending that drove us
and if
into
anyone
the
should
breach
hurt,
of the
no
debt
one should
ceiling
hurt. No
on
one should
January
hurt.
2.
But if there's hurt that's got to go around, it better
Secondly,
be
my
it
colleagues
better
on
be
the other
landing
side
on
try
you
to
guys
characterize
more.
our choice
You know
of
what I
the
mean? That's
current
terrible.
policy
God, you know,
baseline
it's just.
as a gimmick. And
Anyway,
it's
so I
never been
think
done
the
before.
problem is that Dems have an
Well, they
issue
should have been
with
more careful
expressing
with
that.
their words, because the current
Which I
policy
get.
baseline is currently utilized in
I know,
the
right,
current
Ivy?
CBO baseline for many
Mike
spending
Crapo.
programs. In
That's
fact,
right.
many spending programs, about $2.5 trillion of spending programs are measured under the current treatment, which the Democrats have been using for decades, to make it so they don't have to count spending increases.
That's
as
not fucking true.
an
Why are you
increase in the deficit.
fucking lying, dude?
They are correct that that policy has never been applied to taxes before, because it was not intended to apply to taxes. That ruling and that system that was set up was intentionally designed to
Dude,
favor
Naps,
tax
the fucking
increases over
the
spending
whole
cuts,
fucking thing is that you cannot
and to
increase
force Congress to increase taxes and
the whole
increase
point
spending.
of like the new
was a
math
strategy to
is that
achieve
because they're
what we
using
all
budget
know of as
reconciliation,
tax
there are
and
certain
spend.
fucking rules because budget reconciliation
And no
lets
matter
them
how
get
they try to cover it
around
over
certain
today in
Senate
their
rules and
debate,
it lets them get around the
comes
filibuster.
down to
But as a
this.
result, because
are
they're fucking
furious
cheating,
that we
they have to
refuse
like
raise
they have
taxes
to
in
limit their
America
bill
by
to doing certain things. And one of the
$4.3
rules that they have
trillion
to
on America.
follow if they're gonna
they
do
claim
that
that
and they're gonna
our
pass it with a simple
refusal
majority
to raise
is
your
not raising the
taxes,
fucking
America,
deficit
is going
over
to
10
run up the
years with
deficit
whatever they're gonna pass in
because
this
they
bill.
can't get
Here's the
$4
thing,
trillion
they're
more in
welcome
their
to
taxes
raise
into
the
their
deficit
pockets.
permanently. They're
So the
welcome to
first
fucking do
failure
that.
of
But
that
in order to do that, they
rationale
can't
is,
use budget
if you
reconciliation.
believe that
So like when he's saying like, oh, but we don't count this, we don't count that, it's like, yeah, because it's a different fucking process entirely. It's not part of the fucking budget reconciliation shit, dude. Like, stop. Like the fact that you are so fucking willing to be fucked by these guys, and I mean quite literally, you're bending over for them, begging for it, is like, oh my, like I hope you gotta be a fucking billionaire. If you're not making at the very least a very comfortable 6 figures, you're fucked and you deserve it, dude. But Naps, how do you think they're getting around the rules? That's the point. They're changing the way they're calculating it in order to get around the rules. Because the thing is, this bill, this fucking budget that they're trying to pass through reconciliation raises the deficit by $4 trillion. And they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to do it. They're not allowed to raise the deficit. Like everything basically has to even out at the end of a decade. That's the fucking rule for using reconciliation. But they don't want to do that. Because they want to give all the fucking billionaires their permanent tax cuts, and they want to cut and as much as they cut all your fucking services, Medicaid, Medicare, just everything, all your Social Security and shit, they can't afford the huge fucking tax cuts they're giving to the wealthy. So, in order to just pass this bill, this reconciliation bill, with a $4 trillion increase on the deficit, they are changing the way it's counted. That's why they're doing that.
To let your taxes go up by $4 trillion is not a deficit increase. You are not the responsible. Us keeping your money in your pocket is not making them responsible.
They're just talking here. They're fucking. They're just fucking like talking themselves in circles, trying to make up excuses for why they're changing the way it's fucking counted in order to pass this bill that is not supposed to raise the deficit at all. But they're raising the fucking deficit with these fucking tax cuts.
This is not a gimmick. The gimmick is the one.
It's a fucking gimmick. It's a fucking gimmick.
We're making a balance between.
They're just hoping they know that you're fucking stupid. Like that's what they know, dude. They know it. They know it.
A fair chance against the rules of this chamber.
God.
Now, one other thing that I think needs to be made here is there was a lot of talk on the other side, and then I'll stop and bring my longer speech later. One other point that needs to be made here is that it was suggested that this has never been done before, even on taxes. Well, there's a president named President Obama who faced a similar situation like we face today. Only then he was president when a huge tax cut that President Bush had accomplished was expiring. And all of those tax cuts that President Bush had been able to achieve were going to go away, and everybody's taxes were going to go up. And President Obama said, no, I'm not going to let that happen.
You mean because of the recession that we were in, thanks to your fucking catastrophic economic policy? Crapo.
Increasing the deficit by not letting taxes go up. And President Obama, through
Which he had to do to rescue the fucking economy from your fucking policy? Every fucking time Republicans write some economic fucking policy, we go to shit, dude.
And that if his act in letting those tax increases
2008, exactly.
be kept in place should be scored as current policy, not as
2008, they fucking crashed the economy, and they're whining about the fact that Obama had to take some fucking measures to fix it. Never forget that. Republicans crashed the fucking economy, dude. They put us through the fucking Great Recession. They also put us through the Great Depression, dude. Every fucking huge crash has been a result of Republican economic fucking policy. It's like you're fucking bad at this, dude. And it's like if you support them, you're just fucking stupid. You're stupid. You don't know how anything works, and you're stupid. I'm gonna get fucking banned. I don't even care at this point. I don't care. Fucking ban me. Go for it.
And we're not going to let that happen. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Yikes, dude.
Mr. President, I rise today in opposition to a widely irresponsible legislation that is before us now.
It is exhausting.
Our colleagues are calling it the big, beautiful bill. This bill would instead
PA, they're
be
bringing up
betrayal
Obama having, like, extending
economic
tax cuts
Hardworking
that
American
they, because,
families and
so
some of
remember
our
how
most
under
vulnerable
Bush, thanks to
seniors,
Republicans, they
children,
gave a bunch of people a
and
bunch of
people
tax cuts,
with
and then between
disabilities.
that and their other
This bill
catastrophic
will blow
economic
up
policy,
our
they
national
crashed the
debt,
entire fucking
kick
economy
millions of people
globally.
off of their health care,
Because they also, like, just fucking let just capitalism run fucking wild. So then Obama came into office in 2008, right as that was fucking on its actual, like, crash landing, and their tax cuts were set to expire right as he came in, by design, because that's what Republicans do, right? They impose huge tax cuts that expire right as what they expect is going to be the end of a two-term president, right? Because usually we go two terms. So Republicans landed into this fucking pattern where at the beginning of a president's, like, first term, they will pass tax policy that lasts for exactly fucking 8 years, where all these huge tax cuts that run up the deficit are in place, so that right when a Democratic president comes into office, as usual, the taxes have to be raised so that the country doesn't go bankrupt. So now they're fucking whining that the last time they crashed the economy, actually no, 2 times ago that they crashed the economy, when Obama was walking in as their tax cuts were set to expire again, he extended the tax cuts so that everyone who was stuck in the great fucking recession of their making didn't also suddenly have a huge tax increase like they had planned for them to. And now they're fucking whining about it. Now they're fucking whining about it.
Within the next decade,
They're just, it's
country will
such,
spend more on
I can't
services
believe
and debt
anyone fucking falls
than
for
we
it. I
do
can't
on
believe
any
anyone
other
falls for
federal
it.
account outside of Social Security. Our fiscal house is basically on fire. But if our Republican colleagues jam through this bill, it's not going to pour water on that fire. It's going to pour
I can't
gasoline
fucking
on those
believe
flames.
these morons, dude.
Democrats have tried to make efforts to pay down that debt in recent years. In fact, under the Inflation Reduction Act, a law that this bill attempts to actually gut, we reduced the deficit in that bill by nearly $250 billion. And in 2023, we passed the Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act, which responsibly addressed the debt ceiling and had the potential to reduce deficits by up to $1.5 trillion. But unfortunately, the bill before us basically wipes all of that away. And I have always said that I'm open to making smart cuts to spending, but that those cuts should be matched with increases in revenues. Doing so would put us back on a sustainable
Quick, guys,
financial
should I get
path.
hummus or fries on the
Our
side?
Republican colleagues are doing the exact opposite. They're making drastic cuts. To
No,
revenue.
that's not how that
According
works.
to the
No.
nonpartisan Joint
Does,
Committee on
no.
Taxation,
It absolutely
tax
does violate the
provisions
rules for
in this bill alone
reconciliation.
would decrease revenues by
Did you just Google that?
$4.2 trillion
No, dude.
and
Dumb
add-
fuck.
Yes,
Don't,
add
how about you stop
$3
speaking about things you
trillion
obviously don't fucking
to our
understand?
national debt.
That's literally by definition how reconciliation works.
If we
It has
face
to be
another
done in
emergency,
2
like
parts.
a pandemic or global
So
financial
reconciliation being gone
will
about
be
the way
too
you
hamstrung
have to go
by our
about
debt
reconciliation
to respond
doesn't suddenly
effectively.
change the fucking rules.
We are on the brink of a financial disaster, and passing this bill
Yeah, you don't know how
just
reconciliation
over
works,
that edge.
obviously. You obviously don't
all
fucking know.
semi-Republican colleagues can cut
You're
taxes
literally proving me
for
right,
billionaires.
actually.
At the same time, our
That's
Republican
literally the normal
colleagues are
fucking
not
process for
making smart,
reconciliation.
sensible spending cuts to cover
It doesn't
the
change
costs
the
that
rules
these
magically.
Billionaire tax cuts will mean.
It doesn't.
Instead, they're gutting health care for millions of Americans,
Hummus and hot
including
sauce
hundreds
with
of thousands
pretzels,
of
pita, veggies.
Michiganders.
It's great.
It's reckless, and it
I'm
is
getting
wrong.
like a...
Medicaid is a lifeline for people.
So
in
I'm
every
getting this
single
like mixed
community
platter that's
across this
chicken and
country.
lamb.
It ensures that
And
millions of
oh, I might be allergic
Michiganders
to
and
lamb.
Americans
Whatever,
can
we'll
have
find out.
access to
And then
affordable
I get 2 sides,
healthcare.
and one is the salad.
right
It's really
now,
good. And then
folks across my
the
home state of
second
Michigan
side, I can either
scared.
get fries,
Scared
hummus,
about what this
or
bill
chopped pita
will
bread.
mean
Which one
for
should I
their
get?
families.
The yeas are 47, the nays are 53. The motion
Fries are
is
really
not
good,
agreed to.
but also the hummus is also really good. I'm sure I guess I
Senator
could
from
also just get.
Louisiana.
Mr. President, we just spent 13 hours doing motions
Does the senator want to call up his amendment?
Mr. President, I call up my amendment 2772 and ask that it be reported by number.
The clerk will report.
The senator from Louisiana, Mr. Kennedy,
What is he
proposes
fucking
amendment number 2772
whining
to
about?
amendment number 2360.
Mr. President, we just spent 13 hours on motions to commit.
How is
I'm not
this
blaming my
man
Democratic colleagues, 'cause we
in
have
charge of
agreed.
anything?
But anybody with a
He's gonna
brain
fuck this
above
country over and then
cell
keel
organism
over.
knows that a motion to commit has no chance of passing. So basically, we've been standing around for 13 hours. We might as well just been standing around.
He's
sucking
obviously a
on our
friend of
teeth.
Dorothy.
Now, I'd like to ask for order in this chamber.
Look at that
least we
tiny
can
his
have
little
that.
hands
There'll
are.
be order, please.
Mr. President, in this bill, $1 billion is set aside to be spent by September 30th, 2027 to carry out the Defense Production Act. That's it. That's all there is. Now, I'm
Yeah,
not a
but
big
that
fan
doesn't
of
suspend the
government
fucking
directed
reconciliation rules, Nap.
Government-directed
It doesn't do that.
industrialization is when government
Dude, it
is
doesn't
with
fucking
superior
suspend the
instinct
reconciliation rules.
and infallible judgment.
Find
decides to pick
find the
winners
law
and
that
losers in
says
the private sector.
having a budget using a budget resolution to set to prep for reconciliation changes the entire rules for budget reconciliation. You fucking won't. What do you mean which rule? The one that I just spent fucking 10 minutes explaining to you.
And number two, when government does it, when it picks
The one where they're pretending that they're not raising the deficit after 10 years and they're changing the math completely because they know that they're not allowed to pass this bill because it raises the deficit at least $4 trillion fucking dollars by the end of 10 years. And you're not allowed to do that if you're doing budget reconciliation.
in the last 76 days of its administration in gifts and loans.
Why the fuck are Republicans so bad at their jobs? Like, why do you want to raise the deficit by another $4 trillion? Why are you defending that?
$1 billion.
No, it doesn't, dumb fuck. It doesn't.
That's all it says. $1
It
billion
fucking
to be
doesn't,
spent,
dude.
period.
Budget reconciliation, by definition, cannot raise the deficit beyond 10 years. Basically, within those 10 years of passing it, it has to have paid for itself.
I know that both of those secretaries, I voted for them.
It has to have paid for itself.
I love them to death.
I'm not. Nah,
But
I'm not.
when I'm in Washington,
I'm
I go by
1000%
this
correct
act.
about this.
Trust in God, but tie up your camel. Trust in God, but tie up your camel.
Also, but again, why do you want the deficit to balloon another $4 trillion fucking dollars?
But Congress has to approve them. Now, about, I don't know, an hour ago, I got a call from one of my supporters, Mr. President. And you know what he said?
He's not gonna look it up. He doesn't know how to fucking read,
He
obviously.
said, Kennedy, for your own good, you need to pull
Fries
down
or
this
hummus?
amendment. You have to pull down this amendment. Kennedy, for your own good, you have to pull down this
I want
amendment.
both.
And you know what I told him, Mr. President?
Okay, whatever.
I said, Scooter.
Fries.
I said, Scooter, there are only two things I have to do in this world. Be cool and die. And I'm not pilling down this amendment. It wasn't right when it was done in the prior administration. It's not right now that we're in charge.
Comcast, the budget resolution adding 1.9 trillion. So, okay, so in 2021, meaning that is not part of this budget reconciliation bill. How the fuck does that disprove the point that this budget reconciliation bill, budget reconciliation, cannot add to the fucking deficit beyond 10 fucking years? How the fuck does that disprove that, dumb, like, I gotta stop fucking saying everything, because
Louisiana does. I think that there should be some flexibility and there should be some governmental policy that helps our industry. And I do agree that the president should have some power. What I do not believe is that the Congress should be powerless.
I don't know how to explain to you how fucking, like, stupid that is.
Our Article 1 authority
That has nothing to fucking do with this budget reconciliation bill.
the most important branch is
Back
the
in
Article 1
2021,
branch, because we
she
are the
approved,
closest
or she cast the tie-breaking vote
How is it
for a 1.9 trillion increase. How the fuck does that disprove that a reconciliation bill, by definition, cannot raise the deficit beyond 10 years? And they are changing the fucking rules in order to do so.
We have no accountability. We have no way to tell the people we represent how this is money.
What a stupid fucking thought. What a stupid thought to have enter your fucking brain. And I'm being generous here by describing it that way. By assuming there is one rattling around in there.
It's responsibility to make the decisions that the Constitution says is our obligation to do. And
You're asking me? Jude, I'm responding to someone. They're not arbitrary. They are correct facts in response to someone being fucking stupid in here.
Mr. President, how much time do I have? Mr. President, I understand my esteemed colleague and I disagree.
Okay. The senator from Louisiana has 30 seconds, and the senator from South Carolina has 4 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Scooter. I'm Mr. President.
Ask away.
Mr.
Great
President,
question.
I appreciate my colleagues' support. I don't mean any disrespect to anybody. But this town operates on two wrongs don't make it right, but they do make it even. It's time that Congress have a say in how the money's being spent.
Yeah, this is live.
It doesn't say the money can't be spent. It just says Congress gets to approve.
Mr. President, I really like my good friend from the great state of Louisiana. And Scooter's cousin Bubba called me recently. And I got to tell you,
I'm ordering a bunch of
there's
fucking
no doubt in my mind that the
comfort food.
importance of the Defense Production Act is undeniable. And specificity is a necessary component for us to have our oversight. And that is why this administration, unlike the last administration, has committed to making sure that we understand how the resources in the DPA will be spent. We have that commitment on a quarterly basis to receive the necessary information so that we understand with great clarity and transparency how the dollars within the DPA will be spent. But here's
This is
what we
C-SPAN,
also
yeah.
know, that we
That's exactly what I
remain
did, Dan.
reliant on China for critical minerals. Here's what we know, that the United States of America, the city on the hill,
Thank you, guys.
remains dependent on foreign powers for our necessary resources. We are not self-reliant in areas that matter the most to the American people and, frankly, to America's future. Now, you can think of this as just hyperbole.
I shouldn't be spending on money like food, on money on food like this.
Issues like COVID and PPE.
But I don't care.
We were begging China.
It's my last
to
fucking
help
meal.
the American people, Mr. President.
Not literally.
We were begging China for medicine, masks. We cannot allow this great nation to be dependent on other nations. We
Exactly,
must
Michelle.
become more self-reliant. And in
Yeah, I gotta go grocery
the spirit
shopping probably
of
tomorrow.
self-reliance, this administration, whom I will
We're going to
say
Costco.
I trust President Trump. I trust his word to produce the results we need for this nation.
Oh yeah, Herbert,
to
and they're
make
gonna
sure that
succeed.
We are self-reliant, and I trust the president to produce the information
point, Gito.
that will satisfy my good friend, Senator Kennedy. But
I
let me
can't
close
wait
with
to go
this.
to Costco.
We need the DPA, and we need the
What does this have to do
funding
with the price of
at the
tea in
levels
China? Did someone
requested.
bring up the price of tea in China?
We must make sure we always have the resources to produce for ourselves if there's another COVID. In the same way that we use
The
the
total
DPA to build
allowance? What are you
levees
talking about?
and flood walls after Hurricane Katrina, we need to make sure we have the resources in place for natural emergencies. In the same way that the DPA was used to help protect service members who were deployed overseas from IEDs, we need the DPA. So, Mr. President,
It cannot be increased beyond the 10
my
years.
colleagues to vote no on this amendment. The pending amendment
I've said this like a
does not
gazillion times,
produce
dude.
a change in
I know you
outlays
can't
of
read. You can't
revenues.
hear either.
I raise a point of order under section
The rule with
313
reconciliation
B1A of the
is that it
Congressional
cannot
Budget
raise the
Act of
deficit
1974.
beyond the 10 years. So we can like raise it temporarily if it's gonna like offset it.
Take your time.
Thank you, sir. Pursuant to Section 904 of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974.
That's an old saying for why are we bringing this up now? Wait, what was it?
Reminding the body that I'm not striking the spending.
Oh, what does this have to do with the
Reminding the body that
price
I'm
of tea in
not striking the
China?
spending.
Really?
I'm
I've
just
never heard that
asking
before.
Congress to approve it. And I asked for the
I don't believe it did get triggered.
Second.
Damn, it should be. Did it? Why do you say
There
that?
appears to be.
They overruled the
Court will
fucking
call the roll.
Ms. Also, bro.
parliamentarian.
Ms. Baldwin.
That's so funny. I'm gonna start using that. What does it have to do with the price of tea in China? Because it's so like apropos, you know what I mean, with fucking tariffs and shit. It's so fucking appropriate for this day and age. What does it have to do with the price of tea in China? God, I love it. I saw that. Damn, I saw that. Yeah, no, they're doing like a Vote-a-rama, so it's all
today to explain my vote.
They're doing like the amendments and stuff.
Against the motion to proceed on this bill.
Motion to waive
Mr. President,
the Budget
I
Act.
spent most of my career in management.
Motion to waive the
managing
rules.
Large, complex enterprise projects,
Let's look it up.
multi-year,
Budget
thousands.
bill. Where'd he go, buddy? Where'd he go? Oh, you're saying no, yeah. So, but it triggered the bird rule, but in that the parliamentarian removed the stuff. They haven't yet passed it. I don't know. We're hoping on some holdouts. Call your representatives, especially if they're Republicans. They're at work right now. Call their fucking offices right now. Their DC offices. They're doing a Vote-a-rama right now. So basically, they've scheduled a certain amount of time to basically go through amendments, a bunch of amendments.
Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Blunt Rochester. Mr. Booker.
I recognize the senator from Kentucky.
In deciding whether to vote for the big, not-so-beautiful bill, I've asked a very specific question. Will the deficit be more or less next year? The answer, without question, is this bill will grow the deficit. The federal government has fancy formulas and hundreds of wonky accountants who inform us of their projections over 10 years. But you often can't trust these projections. In an excellent piece written by the Foundation for Economics and Education entitled "The CBO's Projections Are Worse Than Useless," Eric Schuler writes, "Long-term analysis and language is commonplace in U.S. national politics, but it achieves no useful outcome. It confuses far more than it clarifies. It does not provide accurate estimates of long-term results. It does not improve the average voter's understanding of policy effects. And it gives politicians a means
Oh,
to
how are they
claim
doing that, Desi?
they're being fiscally responsible without actually exercising any prudence whatsoever. Sometimes the predictions are off
That can
because
happen,
a new
Parker.
Congress is elected and changes the law.
That can definitely
Eric
happen.
Schuler writes that for any projection of a 10-year budget to be accurate, the Congressional Budget Office has to assume that the law won't change for 10 years, even as most of the politicians that make the laws risk being replaced every 2 years, and all of them advocate for changes of one stripe or another. Schuler states that few in Washington will admit Congress has a knack for starting any proposed cuts in the later years while letting spending run wild in the immediate future. Sometimes these predictions are off by $1 trillion
Yeah,
or so
decades,
because
Manhattan.
the economy grew more slowly
Fucking decades.
or more quickly than anticipated. Bruce Thompson, a former Senate aide and Assistant Secretary of Treasury, writes, the Congressional Budget Office miscalculated the deficit last year.
But what are they
by $1
doing?
trillion.
Google
so in
Doc.
deciding whether
Okay.
to vote for any big,
Okay.
monstrous bill, it
Nice.
helps to ask the right
I like
question. To me, the most pertinent question is how will the bill affect the
Oh my God, I
deficit
love that.
in
What the
next
fuck?
year? Currently, our deficit
How do I
is
find this,
estimated
Desi?
to be a little under $2 trillion this year. What will happen to the debt in
Eliza Orleans. If
2026
anyone has a link
if
to
this
the
bill
doc, could you send it
passes?
my way? I want
Well,
to see it.
using the math most favorable
Yeah, I
to
love
the
that.
supporters of the bill,
All right, I'm taking
referred
photos so
to
I
as
can
the
save this.
policy baseline, the deficit in 2026 will still be $270 billion more than this year. So even using the math, even using
I'm
the formulas
ashamed to
that
admit
the
it
supporters of the bill
but
like,
I'm
the
not going to
deficit
be a
will grow
very
by
good person
$270 billion next year.
to Republicans
That's just
for
not
like a
good if you
decade.
profess
I'm going to laugh
to
at
be
them as they
fiscally
suffer.
conservative. Why will the deficit
And
grow
I'm
next
sorry.
year? Well, even if you argue that the 2017
I'm sorry.
tax cuts
Deep
don't
down,
need
it's
to be
not me,
counted
but
in
I
the
think
calculation at
I've
all,
run out.
the
I think
new
I've run
tax
out.
cuts add up to $234 billion to the debt
I need to laugh at
next
something.
year.
Someone.
In addition, the big not-so-beautiful bill adds new spending of over $500 billion, military, border, agricultural subsidies, etc. That spending is front-loaded and will be spent in the first 4 years
At least I
of the
apologize in
10-year
advance.
window.
That way you know
Legislative spending is one of the few items
that I
in the bill
actually am
that is
sorry.
exact.
I'm not
It
just
isn't
sorry that I got caught.
estimated. If they say they'll spend $500 billion, they're going to spend $500
I gotta
billion,
fucking- I
all in
just-
the first few years. So in order not to add to the deficit,
Hi, Miami.
the BBB, the big not-so-beautiful bill, has to have corresponding spending cuts to counter all the new spending.
Hi, Sam.
Unfortunately, the spending cuts are backloaded to the final 5 years of the 10-year window when several tax cuts expire and the spending increases are finished. In addition, elections occur every 2 years and could easily wipe out any perceived savings that might occur in the later years. The only real certainty in this budget drama are the budget years coming in the immediate future. It's the next year or two are the only things that are actually of any certainty. So if we analyze this bill from that perspective, we discover that the bill increases the debt by $500 billion in the first 5 years. This is not the CBO projection that Republicans have not liked. This is the projection they are using, says the debt will add $500 billion in the first 5 years. Now they say somehow, miraculously, in the last 5 years, it gets to a $500 billion in savings. So it's $1 trillion shift from year 5 to year 10. The CBO scores it differently, not as encouraging, and says it adds over $3 trillion in debt. So which is it? Does this bill save $500 billion over 10, or does it add $3 trillion over 10? The truth is that anybody, that even a person with a magic crystal ball, it's anybody's guess. Which brings us back to maybe we have to judge the effects of the big, not-so-beautiful bill by looking at what happens to the debt next year. Supporters of the bill admit it adds $270 billion to the debt next year. That's the only thing we know for certain. We don't know what happens in year 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, but we know next year this bill will grow the deficit by $270 billion. In addition, the bill increases the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. What does that mean? That is an admission that they know they aren't controlling the deficit.
We're
They
cooked.
know that the ensuing years will add trillions more. So we're adding $2 trillion this year, but they're anticipating, the authors of the bill
Is he holding
anticipating
strong
adding more than $2 trillion next year.
against it?
That doesn't sound at all conservative to me.
I know, right there.
And that's why I'm a no.
Good. Thank you, Rand Paul. Snaps.
Thank you, Mr. President.
For
Mr.
Rand
President,
Paul.
I come today to explain my vote yesterday for voting against the motion to proceed on this bill. Mr. President, I spent most of my career in management consulting, managing large, complex enterprise projects, multi-year, thousands of hours.
I thought there was a way
lot
of swiping
complexity that take
on.
people, process, and technology to make it work. I learned a lot in that career. And I was able to go to the
TikTok lives, I
legislature
would
and
like-
take that mindset as a member of the minority for 2 terms. And then we got a majority in 2010.
They're not acting like it, Herbert.
And I found myself being the Speaker of the House. Mr. President, we were in the middle of the financial crisis. When I got sworn in January of 2011, North Carolina had a $2 billion shortfall on a $20 billion general revenue fund.
Is there a way of
And I
clearing
had 6 months to
swipe
balance
left
that budget.
above chat?
Well, Mr. President, we did something that had not been done in North Carolina. We took the time to understand
that's not how it
every
works here.
aspect and every dollar that was being spent in government. We determined how to cut government in a way that was sustainable. We cut 12% from the university system
My
budget.
food's on its way.
Not the rate of growth, but the actual spending. And I had some people say that it was going to be disruptive and the University of North Carolina would never be the same again. But, Mr. President, we did it in a way that was instructed
What
by
bill
the
is she gonna
operations of the
introduce?
university system. And we did it
Hey,
in a
Bray,
way
guess what? The
that
deficit literally always
concerted
climbs
the chancellor.
under fucking Republicans. And save for the pandemic, it goes down under Dems, under Dem policy, at least. The U.S. give a shit about, or the Dems give a shit about the deficit. They always have. Republicans literally always fucking balloon that shit. But sure, keep proving to us how little you read.
Discipline and due diligence. It has no insights into how these provider tax cuts are going to be absorbed without harming people on Medicare. And
It's
even
going to take
worse,
all night.
most of my
This isn't going to
colleagues do not
happen
even understand
overnight.
on either side of the
Dems
aisle
are trying to like
the
delay it as long
interplay
as
of
possible.
state-directed payments and the
They're only going to be able to
devastating
delay it
consequences of the
basically
funding
for the rest of the
flows that
night.
are going to be before us. Mr. President,
Oh yeah.
here's how I figured out the impact in North Carolina. I used to be Speaker of the House, and I like the Speaker and have good relationship
Yeah, it's fucking
with the
bullshit,
Speaker and the
Deirdre.
President Pro Tem.
What the
So
fuck
I
is wrong
called
with
them up,
fucking Republicans?
and I
Fuck
had my
you.
staff ask them
Not
if
you,
they
Deirdre.
would do an economic impact assessment on what this
Fuck
proposed bill
Republicans.
would do to the
Fuck it,
Medicaid
like actual
program in North
garbage humans.
Carolina.
Literal
But
scum.
I didn't want just the view of the Republican partisan staff that reports to the Speaker and the President Pro
I'm
Tem
so
on
over
how
this
they're
shit.
going to absorb this bill. I decided to go to Josh Stein, the governor, and I went to his Democrat staff for Medicaid. I asked them to prepare an
I can't wait till y'all go
independent of
hungry,
the
man.
estimate that I had done with fiscal research. But I took a step further, Mr. President. I went to the Hospital Association. I asked 3 different independent groups,
Right?
a partisan Democrat
Duh.
group, a partisan Republican group of experts, and a nonpartisan group of the Hospital Association to develop an impact assessment independent.
A washed,
not talking,
effed?
not
What
sharing,
do you mean?
reporting to me. And what I found is the best case scenario is about a $26 billion cut. Now, we've got a delay, so it may be 2 years, it may be 1 year. All it does is make that $26 billion happen in year 1 or year 12, but the impact is the same, Mr. President.
You mean the deficit? Oh, the deficit went up while we were in a recession that was caused by Republican economic policy? Wow!
Administration say you're all wet, you don't know what
We were literally talking about this 20 minutes
Well, why
ago.
don't we assemble a series
20 minutes ago.
of meetings? We're gonna
You guys
provide
fucking
you
crashed the
our
economy because that's what Republicans do best. And then Obama walked in and had to fucking deal with it. Literally, what Republicans do best. You know that Republicans caused the fucking Great Depression, right? And the Great Recession. Republicans literally ruin everything. You guys are so fucking bad at everything you do. You're so fucking bad at everything.
With CMS, with Oz on the phone and with on the video and me on the video. And I said this, guys, I would love nothing more than you to prove me wrong. I would love nothing more for you to tell me it's not 26 billion.
National
30
divorce would be
billion,
great.
That it's 2.6 billion or 2 billion. or
They're going to
200
go
billion.
overnight.
But after 3
The final vote is going to happen
attempts
technically tomorrow. I think they're going to be up all night.
our estimates,
Good.
the day
Let 'em
before
fucking suffer.
yesterday, They admitted that we were right. That between the state-directed payments and the cuts scheduled in this bill, there's a reduction of state-directed payments. And then there's the reduction of
No,
the
like
provider
overnight
tax.
till morning.
They can't find a hole in my estimate. So what they told me is that, yeah, it's rough,
Yep.
but
Woe is right.
North Carolina's used the system. They're going to have to make it work. All right. So what do I tell 663
Sure,
people
Bray.
in 2 years or 3 years?
God.
When President
The
Trump
stupid really
breaks
are
his
fucking
promise by
useful.
pushing them
Y'all
off
are
of
so fucking
Medicaid
useful for
because
them.
The funding's not there anymore, guys. When the White House senators advising the president are not telling him that the effect of
Yep,
this bill
Pierre.
is to break a promise.
Thank you, Manhattan.
And you know, the
If I
last time
disappear,
saw
I probably
promise
got
broken around
suspended.
healthcare, with
I can't.
respect
I
to my
can't give a
friends on
fuck.
the
I
other
can't.
side of the aisle, it's when somebody said, if you like your health care, you can keep
I need
it.
someone.
If
I
you
need like a
your doctor,
mod
you can keep
with
it.
like a buzzer, just like hanging out
We
and
found
just
out
like
that wasn't true.
live buzzing
That
me.
makes me the second Republican Speaker of the House since the Civil War, ladies and gentlemen, because we betrayed the promise to the American people. 2 years later, 3 years later, it actually made me a U.S. Senator because in
Thank you,
2010,
Darian.
it had just been proposed. And just anticipation of what was going to happen was enough to have
I am
a
stinky
sea change
right
election
now.
that swept Republicans
I'm
into
stinky.
the majority for the second time in 100 years.
The Staples button.
Now,
That's what it is.
Republicans are about to make a mistake
I
on
do.
health care and betraying a
But
promise.
fuck Staples. Isn't Staples behind
It
some of
is
these
inescapable
fuckwits?
that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made in the Oval Office or in the cabinet room when I was there with finance, where he said we can go after waste, fraud, and abuse on any programs. Now, those amateurs that are advising him, not Dr. Oz, I'm talking about White House healthcare experts, refuse to tell
My
him
food's
that
almost here.
those instructions that were to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse all of a sudden eliminates a government program that's called the provider tax. We have morphed a legal construct that admittedly has been abused and should be eliminated into waste, fraud, and abuse. Money laundering. Read the code. Look at how long it's been there. I was Speaker of the House. I refused to do it. When I left North Carolina, I said, we're not going to do a provider tax. I left it at 2.5%. Now it's 6%. Mistake on the part of the leadership. And frankly, I know my friends are probably going to think I'm a little bit crazy here, but I actually passed a law that made it illegal to expand Medicaid. Why did I do that? Because I was convinced someday we would be here. And I would have rather found a way to get more people on Medicaid at the standard FMAP than having this 90-10 match and watching it disappear and taking away desperately needed health care. So, Mr. President, over the course of the evening, I may look for an opportunity to speak again.
No, this is live.
But I'm telling the president,
Deleting the
that you
alts
have
to own the
been
libs.
misinformed.
Yeah.
You supporting the
I believe
Senate
so. This should be.
mark
Yeah, this is
will
live.
hurt people
No, wait, Sunday?
who are eligible and qualified for Medicaid. I love
Oh shit! Did they flip us into Sunday? No, it's live. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do simultaneous. Like they'll play us something old while giving us a live view of the floor. Because there's like no one speaking on the floor, basically.
Started with the House mark. I've talked with my colleagues in North Carolina. I know.
No, so this is what it is. It's going to be this is live. This is the U.S. Senate vote. This you see this bit up here, and this is yesterday.
But what we're doing, because we've got a view on an artificial deadline on July 4th, that means nothing but another date and time. We could take the time to get this right if we lay down the House mark of the Medicaid bill and fix it. And I know that my friend and colleague from New Hampshire, I jumped in front of her, so I'm only going to take another minute or two. But, Mr. President, we owe it
I think it
to
will
the
pass.
states to do the work to understand how
really?
these proposals
Chairman's
affect
officer?
them.
That's weird.
How hard is that? I did it. How hard is it? How hard is it to sit down and ask the Medicaid
Hasn't he been
office,
bought
ask
off
the
since?
legislative staff,
Wasn't he
ask
bought
the
off already?
Hospital Association what the impact is?
Yeah, so the speech is from yesterday, but this part, this speech is from yesterday. This is the live view of the Senate floor. But since no one's talking and stuff, they just play you like other speeches and stuff that happen at other points. Does that make sense?
Mr. President, we owe it to the American people, and I owe it to the people of North Carolina to withhold my affirmative vote until it's demonstrated to me that we've done our homework. We're going to make
so much food.
fulfill the promise. And
I got a bunch of like munchies. The place is called Munchies.
But until that time, I will be withholding my vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
This is like fried little corn bite things.
Mr. President, we're here today debating a clumsily assembled
Oh no, I
package,
forgot.
still a work in progress.
Good
that
question.
would rip away health care from
Should have said it
16
below
million
him, but
American families, to give tax breaks to millionaires, billionaires, and our largest
Right,
corporations.
Herbert?
Think about that for a moment. The Republicans have decided that the best avenue to generate revenue that they can then give in tax breaks to wealthy people is to eliminate health insurance coverage for 16 million Americans. That's going to have a dramatic
Oh, that's right. He's
impact on
he's
the bottom.
retiring. He announced his retirement.
If you have ever been
North
a
Carolina,
young
then.
father
Yeah.
with a baby with a serious
Pretty sure
medical problem,
Tillis is North Carolina.
and you had no health insurance,
And
you'll never forget it as long as you live. I know.
I don't have health insurance.
The notion of losing your
Tap,
health
tap, tap the live so I can get
insurance
health
as
insurance.
vulnerable as possible at some of the most important moments
I'm
of
not
your
kidding.
life.
I don't have health
If
insurance.
they would consider
I can't afford that
this
shit.
provision
I have to spend
to eliminate
hundreds of
health
dollars a
insurance
month
coverage for
on health
16
insurance that
million
doesn't cover
families
shit.
is
I can't afford that shit.
unimaginable and cruel. Let's
I
not
think I
act
technically
like there's
qualify
a
for
unified
Medicaid.
Republican front on this issue. Even some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't want to be here at this moment, jamming this unpopular bill through this chamber
Is
under
that
arbitrary deadlines.
the problem? Is like,
One of my colleagues
well,
said,
once
"Look,
this
if
this
tax
bill
breaks,
passes, I
you're gonna
won't
hear
qualify
them
for
say
it
over
because
and over again,
of the
"Well,
work
average
requirements.
family,
I
if
don't
we
know
look
that I
at
can
the average
show.
family is going to have to
Like
pay more
now,
in taxes."
so much of my work
There's a way around that.
is
If we limit any tax
fucking
breaks
TikTok.
in this bill, in this
How do I
effort
show that?
to people making $400,000 a year or less, $400,000 a year or less, it virtually eliminates 2/3 of the cost of this undertaking. And it means you don't have to take away the health insurance of 16 million families. So there are ways to do tax breaks.
This is what we got.
Which makes sense. Count this Democrat in with
Basically, the
Republican
restaurant version of a
for
halal
helping
court
working families
cart.
who are struggling to get by, and a lot of them are. Living paycheck
Weekly
to
live
paycheck.
reports.
And the notion that we would say to
But
them,
no, because most of the
"We're
actual
gonna
work
take
I
away your
do
health
is
insurance, we're gonna
like
raise the
filming
cost
and
of health
editing
insurance
stuff.
for
You know what I mean?
is no answer to their problems. Behind closed doors, my Republican colleagues continue to be consumed with infighting.
Yeah, but
bickering
even
over
under the
bill substance,
ACA,
and for good reason.
the cheapest
We have a process
plan
here
is
which
so fucking
almost
expensive.
Impossible to explain to an ordinary person of how we reach reconciliation. The
I don't know. I
parliamentarian's
signed up for
office
it, and then I
said
never
they've
got
gotten
the
an
like.
issue for
I
what
signed up
you've
for it
been
through the
for the last several months, and all your
the
staff have to make
marketplace, and then I
decisions
never
on
got
a
the like
daily
sign up
basis
email
over
from
and
the
over again
fucking
as to whether or
company.
not
And
provisions
I
in
called a
this bill
couple
are
times and it never got
eligible
resolved, and then I
under the
just stopped
law that
trying.
governs the United States Senate. We're in the process of debating this on the Senate floor. I see our ranking member on the Budget Committee, Senate Budget Committee, the senator
Yeah.
from Oregon. We're in the process of still appealing to the parliamentarians.
Yeah, no. In the country, technically, according to the ACA, everyone has to have coverage
I think what
or
they
pay a
do now
fine.
is
I'm gonna have to pay a
probably
fucking
should be.
fine. I don't know.
This bill would be a disaster for hospitals. The Senate Republican bill, unfortunately, is going to endanger hospitals all over the United
Literally
States.
every
If you
fucking
happen
year,
to
I get
live
fucked over by the health
in
insurance
a
bullshit.
small-town, rural area, and I know
Last
there's a
year,
lot of them in the state of Illinois,
I paid.
you're the most vulnerable.
Not
You
last
are
year. The year
target.
before.
When they cut back
No,
on
maybe it was last
Medicaid
year. I don't know.
programs,
The
these
year
are the
before last,
hospitals
I
that will
paid
close
thousands
their
of
doors.
dollars for my health insurance,
What's
and
the
then at the
impact
end
of
of
a
the year,
hospital
they
closing
told
its door
the
in downstate community in
fucking.
Illinois?
I didn't have health insurance for every single month, but I had it
Hospitals
for
are
like
not only the Center for
I think, 9
Emergency
months out of the
Medical
year, maybe
Care,
10.
good doctors,
And fucking spent the
nurses and such.
thousands of dollars for
They're
it.
also
But at the end
a
of the year,
major
they basically
economic
reported to the
force in
marketplace that
small-town
I
America.
didn't.
Take
So
away a
I was
hospital
like,
and then
they
try
were,
to
so
attract a new
basically
business
none
to
of the
the
money
community.
I spent on health
Good luck.
insurance counted
This
towards,
Senate bill cripples one of
like,
the
you know,
main
there's like
ways
a
that states
write-off
fund
basically
their
for
Medicaid
that.
programs
And I
keep
tried fucking
hospitals
fixing it a whole
afloat,
bunch of times, and of course they
especially
never fucking
rural
fixed
and
it, and
low-income
then,
areas. It's called the provider tax. Earlier this week, a Republican senator circulated a flyer to his fellow caucus members, so they're all on notice, detailing just how much each state will lose in Medicaid provider tax funding under their proposal. Let's take a look at my neck of the woods, the Midwest. Iowa
Thank
would
you.
lose
Thank you,
$4.1
Seth.
billion. Missouri, $6.1 billion. Kentucky,
it's a little embarrassing that I'm here talking about how
Louisiana
incapable,
would lose
unable,
$20
and
North
unable I
Carolina,
am to get fucking health
$38.9
insurance.
billion.
I'm in my 30s, man. I should have health
Senator
insurance.
Tillis and I were in conversation yesterday, and he used that very same figure. His analysis says that to go forward with this bill cuts Medicaid reimbursement in his home state of North Carolina by a whopping
Better yet, I'm in my 30s. I shouldn't have health insurance because no one should need to have health insurance. I'm in my fucking 30s. We should have fucking had universal health care in this country by now. I grew up with universal health care, by the way, guys. It's fucking awesome. Don't let them lie to you, ever, ever. Don't let those fuckwads lie to you. Universal health care is the absolute fucking
Decatur,
best.
Illinois, one of the major hospitals facing the crunch time, had to make a decision
amazing.
whether to keep their doors open. They did, but they eliminated OBGYN, delivering
I'm
babies,
stress
and
eating.
they eliminated all mental health and addiction counseling. Two critical
Halal
areas
cart
for
type
the
food.
hospitals. So these doctors, pardon me,
It's not from an actual halal cart, but it's from like a restaurant that's basically that serves like all the halal cart stuff. It's called Munchies.
The hospital will close. Imagine that.
No,
in a
I was not an
rural
army
area,
brat,
remote area,
but
an extra 45
I was born
minutes,
overseas.
An extra hour in the car with somebody
Can't wait to lose
in
my
the front
fucking
seat you love
citizenship.
very much, who's in a desperate situation. As it stands
When that happens,
today,
fuck all
half the
y'all.
rural
Not you
hospitals
guys, but you know.
around the country already operate in a danger zone. And it's the same thing for children's hospitals. You have one in your community that you've used? I do.
I was in Spain.
These children's hospitals have warned us.
It's
they
fucking
can't keep their
phenomenal. We
doors
have one of the
open
best
if Medicaid
healthcare
is cut
systems
as
in the world.
dramatically as the Republicans want to cut it. If Republicans have their way, we're going to
They're
see
doing like a
massive
Vote-a-rama, Rev.
fewer
It's gonna take all
nurses,
night.
clinicians, and doctors,
We're kind of just hanging
along
out
with decreasing quality of
and
care.
like
The American
stress
Hospital
eating.
Association has estimated how these cuts to Medicaid could impact not just jobs
Mm-hmm.
at red state hospitals, but across the entire economy. Here's what they found. If the Republican provision goes through that cuts Medicaid reimbursement in order to provide
Spanish
tax
and
breaks for
American.
wealthy people, Maine, as an example, one state, would lose 5,000 jobs. Kansas, 6,200 jobs. Iowa, 11,000 jobs. Missouri, 26,600 jobs. I've talked to the administrator of BJC in St. Louis, Missouri. The reason is it's not just a Missouri hospital. They have their facilities on the
Do you understand
Illinois
how
side of the
much
river.
someone has
In
to
fact,
fucking
1/3
hate
of their
you
patients
to
are
have
from
the
Illinois.
opportunity to
And
give you
1/3 of their patients overall
universal
use
health care
Medicaid to
and
go to
say,
the hospital.
nah?
So
You know
he's
how,
told
you
me
understand
what's
how
gonna
much someone
happen
has to
if the
hate you to do
Republican
that?
measure goes through
Like, they
and
fucking
cutbacks
hate
to
you,
these
man.
hospitals.
They hate you.
They came up with, incidentally, the rescue fund to solve the political problem. I want to check and make sure Senator Murray can back me up on this. Our overall cut in Medicaid now is at about $1 trillion. $1 trillion.
Oh, within
Imagine
3
this
years?
is
Nice.
Washington, we talk in those terms. Cutting Medicaid nationwide $1 trillion. And the rescue plan for the small hospitals that are in danger, the ones I've talked about, $1 trillion cut. How big's the rescue plan? $25 billion. Do the math. It's a joke. It is a joke.
The crazy thing is, like, this bill is going to make everything so much more expensive for all of us, except for the absolute wealthiest. Have you seen those fucking, the charts?
This simply won't work. I want to conclude
Part
by
of it,
saying
they're like,
this.
part of the charts and like increased costs like include the cost of tariffs and shit, which like, you know, taco, so who fucking knows, but
to help the families across America than anything. We found a way to make health insurance more affordable for families 15 years ago. And to do it, we held hearings. 100 hearings on the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare is what they called it, roundtables, walkthroughs. 2 committees spent a combined 21 days holding markups so that everyone could offer an amendment.
Oh, you know what? I mean, Republicans have literally always fucking hated you. Did you know that Congress passed universal child care once upon a time? Universal daycare? They passed it in the 70s. Sorry, my stomach is like grumbling.
Though not a single Republican senator ended up
We
supporting
had,
Obamacare when it was all over.
we could have had universal daycare. And then fucking Nixon vetoed it. That's how much they fucking hate
40
you.
million Americans to gain health insurance. Today, how many hearings have we had on the bill that's before us, this dramatic
What are the regulations on solar and wind?
None. Zero. Not a single one. 0 markups for senators to offer amendments. 400 amendments on Obamacare. None on this one until it comes to the floor today. 0 bipartisan input.
Sorry, my stomach is grumbling because it's like digesting for the first time today.
Basically, it's a big deal. Take it or leave it. Should this bill become law, do you know what we'll done?
I don't think Puerto Rico is still Commonwealth. I think it's more just because so Spain has like a bunch of like Spain has paid some whatchamacallit.
I'm hoping that sanity and common sense prevail. We need 4. We need 4
oh my God.
senators to step
What's the
up and
fucking
say,
word?
Stop this train. We've got to sit down and do our homework.
What's the word?
We cannot expose the American families
It's so
and the American
embarrassing.
economy
Fell out of my head.
to do this in the name of preserving tax breaks for the wealthiest people. Elon Musk seems to be doing okay in life, right? The wealthiest man in the world. Do you know what the tax break is for Elon Musk on the bill that's before us on the floor?
Not restitution, but it makes the same. Reparations. Reparations. So Spain has paid into a reparations fund over the years. It's like one of the few countries that has. But also, I think a lot of, like, I don't think there's any countries. The way Spain went about, like, colonizing was a little bit different than the British Crown. So it didn't have like the same, like the relationship between Spain and its colonies wasn't the same as the Crown and its colonies. The Commonwealth was like more intertwined.
The answer, without question, is this
but
bill will grow the deficit.
I believe Spain like has basically like makes it really easy to get citizenship if you're in any sort of area that was ever colonized by the Spanish.
You often can't trust
just because they're like, yeah, that was fucked.
In an excellent piece written by the Foundation for Economics and Education entitled "The CBO's Projections Are Worse Than Useless," Eric Schuler writes, "Long-term analysis
as it should be, yeah,
commonplace in U.S. national politics, but it achieves no useful outcome. It confuses far more than it clarifies. It does not provide accurate estimates of long-term results. It does not improve the average voter's understanding of policy effects. And it gives politicians a means to claim they are being fiscally responsible without exercising any prudence whatsoever.
See if he ever actually makes good on his fucking promise.
Because a new Congress is elected.
Someone tells me he fucking won't, but I'd like to see if any Republicans get scared.
The Congressional Budget Office has to assume that the law won't change for 10 years, even as most of the politicians that make the laws risk being replaced every 2 years. And all of them advocate for changes.
Right, we already heard you.
Here we go. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to. The point of order is sustained and the amendment falls.
So this is live. No, that was yesterday. Is someone yelling, "Shame on you" again? Someone's yelling, "Shame on you" again. Good for them. I need to get my driver's license so I can start driving to DC for shit like this.
Mr. President,
Senator from Maryland.
I have a motion to commit at the desk.
Clerk will report.
Senator from Maryland, Ms. Alsobrooks, moves to commit the bill, H.R. 1, to the Committee on Finance with instructions.
I ask that further reading of the motion be dispensed with.
It's a couple hours.
I want to know if my colleagues on the other side of the aisle believe that there are some Americans so
No, that's not true, Naps.
perhaps they don't need a tax
You have
break
the
at
option
expense of health care
to buy supplemental, but also, by the way,
So I'll kick off this dialogue
the
by
whole
raising
wait
a
list thing is
common sense
like
idea.
bullshit
We can save
narrative.
healthcare
There's
for
a bunch of
millions
stuff like
Americans if we strip
the
out
wait
tax
times
giveaways
vary
for
by
individuals
procedure, and there's like a
making more
shit
than
ton of
$10
procedures
million.
in the U.S. that have way longer wait times than any country with universal health care, especially Spain. Spain's pretty fucking fast. Also, I can attest to the fact that like I've been to the ER in the U.S. and with insurance, and I've been to the ER in Spain without, and I was seen faster, and I was given way more care and attention in Spain than I was in the U.S. And in the U.S., even with insurance, even though I was like fucking bleeding out and I was passing out repeatedly, they wouldn't fucking do anything until I filled out some fucking forms. Took me forever. And even with insurance, I walked out with an over $6,000 bill. Fuck that shit, dude.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Senator Kennedy talked about Scooter, and Senator Scott talked about.
Don't you need referrals for so many things? Naps, you need referrals in the U.S. In Spain, it's like you get referrals, but it's like really easy. You know what I mean? Like, but in the U.S., you need referrals as well, and then you have to wait until your insurance approves your referral. Like, have you never have you literally never received a referral in the U.S.?
In Nashville, Tennessee.
You receive referrals in the U.S., and then when you receive referrals in the U.S., you get to pay each individual doctor that you then go to, and then and each time you get a referral, your insurance has to approve it, and every time you get like a procedure, your insurance also has to approve it. That bullshit doesn't happen in Spain. In Spain, yeah, you show up, you say, hey, something's going on with me. They'll refer you to the right doctor, and you'll go and you'll see that doctor. No one has to, like, fucking approve it or anything like that. It's just the reason there's, like, that referral system. It's funny, we have the referral system for the same reasons, right? In the U.S. Or in Spain, you have a referral system to make sure that you're sent to the right doctor and you're not just, like, jumping around, seeing a bunch of doctors, using up resources, like, unnecessarily, right? Because we're all paying into it. It's taxpayer funded. In the U.S., you do it so that your insurance doesn't have to pay doctors if it can afford it. You know what I mean? If it can avoid paying doctors, it's going to do it. Like, you know, don't fucking come at me saying, like, oh, they have referrals. Okay.
Favor say aye.
My dad, so two visits ago to Spain. 3 now, actually. I was actually in Spain because my dad was sick, right? My dad's in his 70s. He's old. He's got a bad heart. And,
Senator from Arizona.
and it was like, it was a 6-month wait to see my, yeah. I mean, seriously.
Clerk will report.
The Senator from Arizona, Mr. Kelly, moves to commit Bill H.R. 1 to the Committee
So-
on Finance with instructions.
Is it long? Not really. Again, Michael, so the whole wait times thing, you can compare the wait times by procedures. And like certain procedures, sure, you have to wait in Spain, but most of that, like, you're only waiting for procedures if it's like elective. You know what I mean? If it's emergency, you're not waiting for anything. The ER in Spain for me has been 10,000 times faster than any ER in the U.S. But you don't have to, like, there's not, I've experienced more like wait times with trying to just get a basic appointment in the U.S. than in Spain. In Spain, there's like a typical thing. So like, you know how in the U.S. you have like, now you have like urgent care things because no one can afford to go to the ER. In Spain, you have the ER, and the ER is also sort of like urgent care. So if you get sick, even if it's like not that serious, you go to urgencias, which is like the ER, right? If you don't want to wait to like make an appointment like the next day or whatever. You go there, they check you out, and either they'll admit you if it's something serious, or they'll just fucking say, you know, patch you up and send you on your way, and you walk out without a fucking bill, and it's fucking awesome. Like, so when I was in Spain 2 years ago, I was there because my dad was sick. So my dad had a checkup, right? And I flew to Spain to be there with him for his checkup because basically a month earlier, my mom was in Spain. She was like signing her fucking divorce papers, right? And he ended up in the ER. And so she was there to like make sure he went to the ER when he was like sick and stuff. And he really hates, hospitals, all that stuff. But like a month later, he had a checkup for his heart and stuff. And we knew that if something was wrong, he wasn't going to go to the ER. So I literally flew to Spain to just be there in the room with him while he was meeting with a doctor. And,
All opposed? Nay.
That was like
Noes appear to have it. The noes
basic,
do have it.
he got the appointment for that,
Motion is not
like
agreed
right
to.
when he
Clerk
needed a point. They were like, okay, you're going to have a checkup in like
Clerk will not
now, you're going to have a checkup in a month, and you're going to have a checkup in 6 months. And they
Senator
scheduled it right then and there. That's not like a long wait time. That's just like the check, whatever. So we went into the doctor. The doctor was like, sir, your levels, they're fucked up. You need to go to urgencias, right? You need to go to the ER right now. And he was like, no, of course not. Whatever. Personal drama aside, I eventually get him to urgencias, to the ER, and his heart is so bad that they admit him. They're like, we have to admit you. And my dad was fighting it every step of the way, of course. And sure, like he was sitting in the ER for a couple of hours because they were like, hey, we're going to admit you and stuff, but we got to like prepare the room. So sure, he was in a private stall in the ER, like private room, one of those mini room things, private room, like in a fucking bed thing there. We had the TV on, we were hanging out. It's not like the best fucking room, but he was in the hospital. He was like hooked up to the machines. He was fine, and we were there for a few hours until they like took him upstairs, and then he spent a week in the hospital. A week. And granted, it wasn't a private room. He was sharing it with one other man. There was a curtain, but it was like, decently sized room. It wasn't weird at all. I spent most of the time there. The other guy's family spent most of the time, the time that he was there.
If you are going to ruin people's lives,
It was, he was there for a full fucking week. Also, they had like these really cool little iPad things, where I figured out how to get some of the streamers on there. And so he was there. I set him up with like HBO Go and stuff. He loved it. It was so upset. It was great. Like, it was the only way I could get him to just chill the fuck out.
Senator of North Carolina.
Whole week goes by, and they're like, okay, cool, you're good. All right, sir, time for you to, check out, whatever, to be discharged. And we'll see you again in 3 months, I think it was. Whatever. And we walk out, and that's it. They don't hand us a bill. They don't ask for insurance information. They don't anything. They're like, cool. Like, the doctor came in, gave him all the things, gave him the talking to, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. I hope I'm not going to see you again, sir. I hope your checkup goes well in 3 months, and I hope to never see you again.
All opposed, no.
Yeah. Great.
The noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. Motion is not agreed to.
It's fucking awesome.
Mr. President.
And so when people say like, oh, long wait times, it's like,
I respond. We can
no,
solve this problem and solve the
not really. Definitely not. I have waited longer for every type of medical thing I could get in the U.S. I have waited longer in the U.S. than I have in Spain for the equivalent. Every single fucking thing. In an ER, for a GP appointment, for like a semi-urgent, need to see a doctor, like quickly, ideally, sort of appointment, or even just a walk-in for those. Every single thing, I've waited longer in the U.S. than in Spain. And then when we're talking long-term procedures with like actual wait times, that entirely depends by procedure. Like a hip replacement surgery might be on average like a 3-month wait in Spain and a 6-month wait in the U.S. Whereas a knee replacement surgery might be a 3-month wait in the U.S. and a 6-month wait in Spain. You know what I mean? So like stuff like that, the wait times literally depends on the procedure.
Does the senator wish to call up his motion?
I have a motion to commit it to desk.
Clerk report.
Yeah, right, Herbert?
Mr. King moved moves to commit the bill H.R. 1 to the
I ask that
committee.
further reading of the motion be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President.
Senator from North Carolina.
Mr. President, in truth, you could see this sort of upping of the ante. These are the gimmicks that we play when we want to get a show vote, especially with somebody who may be running for re-election.
Really? I mean, my dad didn't like the hospital food all that much. I think I think he thought it was fine. I think he thought it was fine, but I was bringing him food as well, just because it was like better. You know what I mean? It's fucking hospital food. They feed you at hospitals, at least in Spain.
And for that reason, I would suggest just one more loud no vote.
Questions on the motion?
Oh, that's funny.
All in favor say aye.
World Cup. World Cup
All
is
opposed,
rough.
no. The noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. Motion is not agreed to.
Mr. President,
Senator from California.
I have a motion to commit at the desk.
Clerk will report.
The Senator from California, Mr. Padilla, moves to commit the bill H.R. 1 to the Committee on Finance of the Senate.
I ask that further reading of the motion be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Colleagues on the
Anyway,
other side of the aisle, I know that you take great pleasure in criticizing
I just went on a
the federal
long rant.
deficit under
My
Democratic
educational background, yeah.
administrations. But the numbers don't lie. The
Not
biggest
what I
driver
pretend to do
of
here. I went to NYU for film and TV production. I have a minor in psychology, and I almost did a double minor in sociology as well.
Parliamentary gymnastics that are being played here are
I would have loved to have gone to
that this bill
I would have loved to
is
do
adding
two
an
things:
additional
get a master's in psychology
$2
and go to law school.
over the next
But
10
I
years.
can't afford that shit.
Why else would they have
In America.
included a piece of the bill to raise the debt limit by $5 trillion if this
Thank you,
will save
Species.
money as they claim? So if Republicans really do want to balance the budget or reduce the deficit, let's start by guaranteeing that this measure is at least deficit neutral. That's exactly what this amendment would do. I ask for your aye vote and reserve my time.
Senator from South Carolina.
Yes, CBO tells us
Are you
if we
serious?
adopt current policy for taxes, we will save $507 billion.
How the fuck are they gonna do the fucking World Cup, dude?
We do this. In 2012, I was here. The Bush tax cuts were going to expire in December of 2012. President Obama sat down with Republicans, and they came up with a way to extend those tax cuts by not passing a new law. They called it the alternative fiscal scenario that CBO said is basically the current policy. So alternative fiscal scenario in Latin means current policy. So we're doing what they did then. We're just doing it without any help from y'all.
Psych.
'Cause y'all will never do anything to make sure taxes go down. So we're going to make sure.
I
they
didn't
go
like
down further.
sociology
Current
all that
policy
much,
is
but
good tax policy.
now as an
Simple
adult, I
deficit
realized it
vote,
was more
we'll be
just.
happy to reduce the deficit.
Now I enjoy sociology. I like psychology a lot better.
Tomorrow, the next day, forever.
I find, I still talk about sociology stuff, obviously,
Tax policy.
but psychology is just fucking my
I'm done.
jam, yo.
Senator's time's expired. Questions on the motion? Question
I
second.
believe the end of debate is going to be sometime in the morning.
Ms. Also Brooks. Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks.
Right? Supports TRP. What's TRP? Oh,
That the Republican budget chairman is using
yikes.
to perform this
Really?
multi-trillion-dollar magical act of making huge
What the fuck happened?
deficit-busting numbers
Latinos.
disappear.
Latinos for Trump.
It's called Section 312. It has been used before.
I know I'm
but it has
technically not
always been
Latina, so I
minor
can't shit talk, but as an actual fucking immigrant to this country,
bipartisan.
y'all are
I
fucking
mentioned earlier
stupid.
the adjustment that was made on a bipartisan basis to the power
As an
of
actual
Republican
immigrant,
administration's
to this country.
numbers
Latinos for
to
Trump.
return the CBO to an agreement that the Senate had previously made.
Can't fucking.
That was not enormously consequential. This is almost certainly the first
One of my
time
cousins
you're
is a
hearing about it.
Latino for Trump, and he can go
Again, in
fuck himself.
2023, as budget chair with Republican Chair Jody Arrington on the House side, we made $105 million
No species.
adjustment to a dairy program. Today we're talking about trillions. This was a $105
Right.
million adjustment.
I mean, it's like such a
Again,
classic.
bipartisan,
I feel like that's actually a
minor,
great
and corrective, fixing a technical
advertisement,
issue
right?
on a bipartisan basis. Last year,
People with
Johnson
like Trump
and
signs
Leader Schumer
in their yard and like
agreed
show
to
how
direct
fucking
CBO
shitty their home
for
is,
a
and
fee
it's like,
program with an OMB estimate, and they used
This is what Trump does?
rule again, collaborating on a bipartisan basis with a matter that was
I'm not
minor
actually rude to
and
people who
corrective.
disagree with me, Naps. I'm rude to people who are bad people.
This is trillions.
I'm rude to people who are literally going out of their way to harm others.
Using this rule to pretend that it's not. Well, the
I have no problem with people who disagree with me. I have a problem with fucking bigots and pieces of shit who literally are making it their life mission to harm as many people as they can
Page
out of selfishness.
754 of this bill is the reality check on whether or not they're running up the debt by trillions. We know they're running up the debt by trillions because they say so
Oh, that's
in
cool.
this bill.
Species.
You can play Senate procedural
Exactly, Carl.
fakery.
No tolerance for the
You can
intolerant.
wave magic wands around numbers all day long, but someday, soon, you hit reality. And you hit reality in the
Plus,
real world
like,
of
you know, who the fuck are you to lament that? Who the fuck are you to lament it? You want people like me gone. You hate immigrants.
This did not raise
I'm an immigrant.
the debt by trillions.
You want me gone. Go fuck yourself,
To
dude.
raise the debt limit by trillions. Here is the text. Subtitle C.
Like the fact that you're mad at me for like not wanting to be your fucking friend
Modification of limitation on the public debt.
when you're out here trying to destroy the lives of so many fucking people and you straight up want me gone
By 5
and you want me to what? To like be nice to you? What the fuck? Like who the fuck raised you? Who raised you?
letting the budget chair make a $1 trillion
What a shitty fucking mother.
fund maneuver.
What a shitty person to raise you.
Because they know pretty darn well what the parliamentarians' ruling would be. And how do they know what the parliamentarians' ruling would be? Because the answer's in their own damn bill. I yield the floor.
Also apparently like hate children, right? Like you want children to go hungry.
You mentioned the use of Section 312, which gives some flexibility to resolve, as you put it, minor issues on a bipartisan basis to correct an issue, a technical issue. In those cases you mentioned, were those on a reconciliation
I had this
bill?
realization the other day. I'm trying to remember
Were they
it.
on a reconciliation bill? I don't believe they were.
No, they were not.
They
In
were
fact, that power has never been used on a reconciliation bill because the following Section 313 gives very specific instructions. It says each provision must be costed out for its impact on both outlays, the spending side, or revenue, should it be a revenue measure. And if you're saying, well, how do I do that? You say,
Yep,
well, if
exactly,
we
Karen.
pass this provision, what will it cost as compared to not passing this provision, not having the bill? That's a comparison to current law. This ability of the
For
budget
YouTube with reporter
chair, and
was
actually the
7
law
years ago.
says the budget committee, to correct technical
Wait,
issues
what?
on narrow issues on a bipartisan basis. Basically solve
I don't understand what
gnarly
you're saying,
little
Manhattan.
budgeting questions, like on the dairy program. you mentioned.
I had this realization. I'm trying to like remember what it was. It was like
Ever. Never used on a broad basis, ever. Never.
it was about that fact that like Republicans are mad when people like
about what
don't want to be their
bill
friend.
costs in this fashion. Now we're turning to
By people, I mean
Senator,
obviously
from,
Dems or
Maryland,
just
who was
people
ranking
on the left.
Democrat on the House Budget Committee for 6 years. So he brings a lot of experience and knowledge about the budget process. Senator Van Hollen.
Well, Mr. President, I thank my colleague and the ranking
Yeah,
member of the
Species.
Senate Budget Committee.
The crazy thing
Murphy.
is, Species, a lot of
I
it
just
isn't
wanna
going to
start by
happen until right after the
reading
midterms.
A statement. This is a quote.
And by the way, make sure that that gets fucking clear. Like, as someone who's in North Carolina, make sure everyone knows, hey, those cuts are coming. Those cuts are coming. They were fucking passed. They're going to hit right after midterms. Right after. Yeah, but Species, I'm telling you, they're not going to get kicked off until after midterms. Make sure. Fucking scream it from the rooftops. Because the problem is, a bunch of people are going to be like, oh, the budget bill passed and nothing changed. See? You guys were like fear-mongering over nothing. Midterms is going to happen. They're expecting Dems to win. And then all of a sudden, that shit is going to kick in. Like, immediately. And all of a sudden, it's going to feel like, oh, we elected Dems to Congress, and all of a sudden, everything, like, got worse. And it's like, yeah, because they put this shit on a fucking timer. They put it on a fucking timer by design. Make sure that people...
Republican Congressman Chip Roy of Texas.
He said he's going to deport Zoran. Didn't he say that he just better behave? I don't think he said that he's going to deport him, did he? Unless it's new.
Enron scammers blush. And I quote those House members for
to produce less on the
we
ice.
can
Yeah,
disagree
maybe.
with what they did in their bill. And I
2 years.
But at least they used honest
obsoletist.
math, and at least they used the math that is required
Really?
by the rules
KK
here in the
Caroline?
Senate.
Hold on. Let me get some water and then
The
we'll
honest
look this
math
up.
that Republicans here in the Senate want to dodge because it will both tell the American people just how big the deficits are, but also because it will screw up their whole entire plan. Just so people listening have some sense of how these Senate numbers are designed to disguise the real impact of their deficits. Look at, for example, the basic individual tax rates in the House bill. When they extended those tax rates from the Trump 2017 bill, it costs $2.2 trillion. Under what we call the current law baseline.
I'm not sure. I got to pull it up, Species. I'm going off of what one of the fucking people in here said, one of the senators.
This year, and that's what it'll cost.
It's possible they changed it from yesterday.
So, under honest accounting, it's $2.2 trillion.
So I actually don't
under
know.
the Senate fraudulent accounting,
I should check that, but
that $2.2 trillion deficit miraculously becomes an $83 billion deficit. Let's look at the House permanent extension of key deductions for businesses.
Yeah, likewise. If you find exactly where it is, let me know.
$821 billion. Under the Senate accounting scam, $6 billion. So what we're seeing here is this blatant, deliberate effort to mislead the American people about the true costs of this bill, about the deficit impacts of this bill, about how it will impact the debt. And we all know that when the debt goes up and we have to put more of our costs on Uncle Sam's credit card, it puts upward pressure on interest rates. That means Americans will pay higher interest rates on their mortgages, on their car loans, and everything else. So when you try to hide the deficit impact, you really are trying to fool the American people, and we're here to blow the whistle. Now, I just want to show our colleagues something that was put together by the Committee for a Responsible Budget. And if you look at the blue, you can see for each year, starting this year, 2025, 2006, the blue is what Senate Republicans claim their bill will add to the deficit. The red is how much more it will actually add to the deficit. So at the end of this 10-year period, what you see is Senate Republicans are claiming that their bill will add $441 billion, which is still a big
Giuseppe, that's because of Republicans. Shut the fuck up, dude. Don't fucking both sides this shit. Don't both sides this shit. Get the fuck out of here with that.
It's $4.2 trillion.
This is very, very much Republicans fucking us over. On this, there is like one fucking side that very clearly has the exact same track record every single fucking time. And I say this as someone who you know is not a huge fan of the Dems. I am not a huge fan of the Dems. But when we're talking about this fucking shit, This is so much the fucking Republican gambit. Like, get the fuck out of here with that bullshit.
Just a make-believe ruse. Yeah, we start providing no tax on tips, but those disappear.
Yeah, the no tax on
Tax
tips
breaks
stops.
for wealthy people, they go on. And they go on not just for this 10-year period, but the reason they violate all the rules of reconciliation is because they keep going on after that. And as Senator Merkley said, if you look at the entire history of the Byrd rule, that's Senator Byrd, it was designed to make sure that 51 senators through a vote could not make these kind of permanent changes in any area, but specifically they were worried about areas that increased the national deficit and debt. So what Republican senators are doing is not only misleading the American people.
Yeah, he went to
but
Seacoast.
they're
You're right.
violating
I
the
totally forgot
entire
about that.
structure
Here you go. Here you go,
that
Papa.
carved out this special procedure that we call reconciliation for the budget, which was intended to lower deficits and debts, not have them go on forever. As Senator Merkley has pointed out, I think if you look over a 30-year period, we're talking about $35 trillion plus additional to the debt. And Republicans want to hide that from the American people. That is budget fraud, pure and simple, and it is a violation of the rules of the United States Senate. This whole special structure that was created not to blow
Hey, I need
bigger
some
holes
ideas,
in
by the
debt
way, guys.
and deficits, but to actually try to constrain them. So shame on everybody who's
I mean, I
part
don't
of
know.
this
This,
part
I
of
mean,
this
you can give
fraud
me
on the
ideas
American
on.
people.
I'm just
I
gonna
yield
say
back my time.
containers.
Senator from Maryland yield for a question.
I got a bunch of like little
found it
bits and
very
bobs of
interesting that you
gear, and I
pointed
want to
out
have like a
that the
nice
tax
organizational
provisions
system where it's like
for
easy to
middle
grab,
class, no
like, you know,
tax
like
on
my little
tips
microphones and
is
stuff.
phased out, and no tax on overtime is phased out.
I don't
And
know. I
what
think
you're
maybe I just need to go to
saying,
the
I
container
believe,
store.
Is that when they put into this bill that a tax break is ending, they're saying that it doesn't cost any more in the following years.
So they are certainly saying that their current policy baseline that they want us to make believe about would say that this
How much
wouldn't
space?
cost them. In other words, if they extended
Pinterest
this,
is
it wouldn't cost anything. It is
How much space
interesting
do I
to note,
have?
not
How
only
much
does
space
that
do I
expose
need?
the fraud behind the current policy baseline, but they made a very deliberate choice. Even though they now say that they can make these tax cuts
Giuseppe,
permanent and
like,
comply with the
Giuseppe,
rules,
why don't you tell me
they
what
decided
you
to make
think
the
the
tax
reasons
cuts
are?
for very rich
Because
people
this is very fucking obvious.
But even though they
The
say it's
reason
not
this
gonna
is
cost
stuck and there's
anything
so
anymore
much fucking
to provide, tax
bullshit
cuts
here
with
is
no
because
tax
they're
on
giving, they're trying to give permanent tax
and
cuts
there are all
to
of these
the
areas
rich,
where President Trump
and they're trying to
promises
cut
he's
all of our
gonna
fucking
take care
services.
of some working people. Well,
They're cutting $900 billion from Medicaid and
tax
stuff,
cuts for the rich, they go on
which
for
they
not just
promised,
the full
they
10 years.
pretended they
Keep
wouldn't
going,
do.
which is why this is a violation of the
IKEA
entire
Calyx. Okay. Oh, is that the one with
So
the
I find
squares?
two things very interesting.
Um,
They're saying if something was in the law
Pegboard I like.
that they passed in 2017 and it expires,
Um,
they're pretending it doesn't expire and therefore extending doesn't cost anything. But in their own bill, when
Yeah,
they
so
say a
they're trying to
provision
do all these
expires,
terrible
they say,
fucking
"No, it
things,
really
and
does
Dems are
die,
fighting
and
them
therefore
on
we're
it.
saving
Dems
money
are fighting them
2
on it.
years
That's
after."
why
How
it's
is
not just,
those
that's why
two
it didn't
things
just magically
possibly
pass.
consistent?
And like, you're fucking welcome
Clearly
from
they're not.
Dems.
I mean, this is literally magical thinking. This is why Republican Congress.
You're whining that they haven't passed the bill. Why do you fucking think that is? Because one side is trying to literally gut this entire fucking country, and the other side is trying to stop them from doing that.
Intellectual and economic fraud. That's what it is. That's the bottom line.
Well, I
No,
know
it's not that
thank the
easy,
senator from
Giuseppe.
Maryland also pointing out that
It's not that easy.
President Trump, he did when he was campaigning, say he
And
was
they need the
fighting for
Senate.
ordinary families.
They need both the House
But
and
in
the
his
Senate, and they need a filibuster-proof majority. So they need over 60 members in the Senate.
Or champions for housing.
But it's harder to
but we're
like
not
basically
champions for
undo a
nutrition,
reconciliation bill
but- or
than to
education.
pass it
But
in the
in
first
fact,
place.
a series
I
of
believe with
5 or
a
6
fucking
billionaires. And now
filibuster-proof
we're telling you
majority,
that in
they
this
might be
bill,
able to
I wanna
repeal
make sure the
good chunks of
American
it,
people
but
understand this, the provisions
who knows
that
if that's
were
gonna fucking
sweeteners
happen.
To say we were helping working people are being phased out, but they're keeping all the
has it
tax
ever been
breaks
done
for
though?
billionaires.
Good question. Let's look that up.
it was right down this hall, actually, that President Trump was sworn in, and he said it was going to be a new golden age for working people. Well, as you're pointing out, and this chart clearly shows, and their own budget reveals, it's clearly a golden age for billionaires and people who make a lot of money. And in this bill, they make sure that that
Yes,
golden
they
age
have.
for very rich people goes on forever. They had a few
They
laws
have
that
been
they were throwing
repealed.
for a
Wait,
little
rules
while,
have been
we can
repealed.
see, to others, but just for a little while and just small amounts compared to the golden age for the billionaires.
Well, I must say my impression is, and I hope you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Republicans are embarrassed.
Yeah, but you understand. So, but they're gonna have to do like piecemeal, basically.
Over $3 trillion in debt in 10 years, and over $30 trillion over 30 years, and that the vast bulk of it goes to billionaires, and so they want to say, we're so
I agree,
embarrassed
Carrie.
because we mentioned fiscal responsibility when we were running for office. We were going to get the budget under control, and they're doing the opposite, and they're embarrassed that they're doing these cuts in programs to fund tax breaks for billionaires. Cutting regular health care, 16 million people losing health care for tax breaks for billionaires. That, as you pointed
But
out,
I'm not.
go on and on
Honestly,
and
I'm
on.
not convinced campaign finance reform actually is gonna fix very much at all. To be honest.
Love to yield to my
At this
colleague
point,
from Rhode Island.
I think we've crossed into an era of billionaires control our media so thoroughly, and by media I mean means of communication, right? Like basically, let's say that you could ban you could ban super PACs and ban campaign spending beyond maybe like what, $200, right? So even the little people can donate. Let's just say. It doesn't matter. Even if we did that, what that would actually just stop you and me from being able to donate to candidates we like. And billionaires would still, obviously, they spend their money on whatever the fuck they want. But even if they weren't, billionaires are the guys that like literally own all of our means of communication. So even if just those billionaires gave enough of a shit to like put their foot on the scales, they would do so, and it wouldn't cost them a fucking cent. I think we're like literally I think we have crossed into an era where it's too late for campaign finance reform to actually fucking fix this. Personally. CNN is conservative. You haven't heard?
Thank the Senator for his question, because it's just stunning to me that the vast majority of debate, in fact, all the debate that came from Republicans at the time I was chair of the
I
Budget
agree. I don't
Committee
think we
trying to
need
put
billionaires when
a
so many people are going
smart
hungry.
budget
Obviously,
for
that's a
the United
problem.
States of America. The only
If
thing
like
we
down
talked
the
about
line, there's
was debt and deficit.
like if
The only
listen,
challenge
I have no problem with there being. Well, that's not
The
true.
only
Because I have an issue with billionaires buying off our politicians also. But like, if we were to set that aside, I would have no problem with people having insane amounts of money if everyone else was totally fine.
for giving tax
I would
breaks to
like
the
at that
very rich
point,
people
it's
who should
fine.
be
I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? I don't care if you're rich. Go be rich. Who gives a shit? But people shouldn't be going fucking hungry when you have like when you have thousands of magnitudes more than what you would be able to spend in a single lifetime
fairy dust.
to your fucking name.
Wanna
And if
say-
people are going hungry,
The question from the Senator from
no,
Rhode
you shouldn't
Island.
be rich like that. You shouldn't be
My
that fucking
colleagues have
rich.
said that, when
And
I
you
was
don't
the
need to be
senior
that fucking
Democrat,
rich.
the
Like,
ranking member on the House
whatever.
Budget Committee, Paul Ryan was the chairman of the committee. And look, we disagreed on
Yeah,
many things.
Andrew,
We agreed on
in a
many
way.
things. We both agreed that we should get our deficits and debt under control. We had different ideas on how to do it. He wanted to privatize Medicare. We wanted to close tax breaks for the rich. But we want to close tax breaks for the rich. But the reality is that the holy grail, I mean, the only guiding North Star for Republicans at that time was we've got to bring down deficits and debt. This is not that Republican Party, not in any way, shape, or form. They clearly don't give a damn. In fact, they are worried, as we can see, that the American people still care, which is why they want to engage in this fraudulent scheme. But I'll just close on this. I remember one of those years, I believe it was the 2012 Republican convention. They even put up a debt clock.
Yay! Oh, Rosa, thank
They put up a
you.
debt clock. at the convention.
Thank you. No, different cuts, different bits of these kick in at different points.
Republicans seem to have hidden it away forever.
You can even
They
look on
wanna
their
wish
fucking
it
chart.
away. That's what they're telling us.
But the bill actually is required to raise the debt limit by $5 trillion. So in reality, there's a huge hit to our debt, huge additions to our deficit, and it makes me a little bit frustrated to think back to all those lectures that I had to receive as budget chairman, which the senator from Maryland witnessed as a longtime member of the Senate Budget Committee, which the ranking member witnessed in his time on the Budget Committee, and which Senator Murray experienced when she chaired the Budget Committee. We have been lectured to death by our colleagues, and at the very first instance when they had the power to do something about it, they went 180 the other direction and are cranking the national debt in order to give big benefits to the rich people who fund their campaigns.
For a question, and I know we need to move on here. I just want to add one thing. It's not just that it's going to be debt. It's the cost to families because this debt they are putting in place. I would ask the chair of the Budget Committee now.
Mr. President.
Senator from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a motion to commit at the desk.
Right, Carrie?
Clerk will report.
The senator from Colorado, Mr.
As
Bennett,
you'd
moves to commit
expect.
Bill H.R. 1 to the Committee on Finance of the Senate with instructions to report the same back to the...
I ask for further reading of the motion be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. The legislation we're debating today
Is doing anything for the
would
fourth?
modestly increase the size of the child tax credit
Fuck this country, dude.
while leaving out more than 17 million children from the full credit.
How does the crown heart
America's
work again?
poorest children,
What does that
whose
mean?
families are struggling to make ends meet, receive nothing.
They're going
from
about
this
it. They're
bill.
going to be working overnight, I think. They're
Everywhere
doing
I go in
Vote-a-rama. They're voting
Colorado, I
on,
meet
they're going
parents
through
who are
amendments and
working
stuff.
hard, often 2 and 3 jobs, just to keep their families' heads above water. Like Americans all across this country, Mr. President, they are wrestling with the legacy of 50 years of trickle-down economics that have benefited the wealthiest Americans while leaving working and middle-class families behind, which this bill does again.
How does the crown heart work again? Or the heartbeat? Oh, I don't know. Well, you can send, I think if you like join the team, it sends it or something like that.
But we know how
Hi,
to
Nathan
end
Scott.
childhood poverty in this country.
How old are you, Nathan?
2021, we
How
expanded
long
the
have you been
child
old enough
tax
to vote?
credit and our childhood poverty.
'Cause that's gonna
We
define
cut
a lot
it
of
nearly
things for
in
us.
half and hunger by a quarter.
The senator's time's expired.
Thank you, Mr. President. We should refuse to pass a bill that adds millions to our debt in order to cut taxes for the wealthiest while
It adds
doing nothing
trillions
for
to our debt,
kids.
dude,
I
not
urge
millions.
My colleagues to support this.
Not
amendment.
millions, not billions,
Thank you, Mr.
trillions.
Senator from Idaho.
Mr. President, the Democrats contend that they want to increase and expand the child tax credit and ensure that big corporations and ultra-wealthy pay their fair share. Despite the rhetoric behind these claims, I remind my colleagues that Republicans created the child tax credit, expanded its availability, and doubled the amount of the credit in the TCJA, which we are working on tonight. This bill not only makes that doubled child tax credit permanent, but also increases it, providing significant
28's
relief
young.
for families. In addition, as a result of the TCJA cutting taxes for overwhelmingly the majority of Americans, with the middle class receiving the largest proportional benefit of these cuts,
No, why
Republicans
can they
made the
lie
tax
so
code
much?
more progressive, not less.
Why the fuck can they
legislation before
lie
us
so much?
Makes those tax provisions permanent. Americans deserve more than empty platitudes. They deserve meaningful tax relief and real results.
They deserve not to get lied to.
The question is on the
In their
motion.
fucking face.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Is there a second? There appears to be. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks. Ms. Baldwin.
How many days are in June? Is it 30 or 31?
Banks.
Do you guys know? We do need to play bingo. 30? Damn. Okay.
Here it is. I got you.
Thank you. Thanks, chat.
Over time.
Thank you, chat.
In fact, they were concerned about the debt.
30. Thank
If you
you.
are concerned
I got
about
it.
deficit and debt, if you are concerned about families, you must vote no on this
Yeah.
bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Tomorrow's when rent is due. How'd you know that's what I was thinking
Mr.
about?
President, I really want to thank my colleagues. I mean, you just said they used to call themselves deficit hawks.
Yeah, Nathan.
We need to call them deficit robins. They're robbing from you to pay for the bill. They are no longer deficit
Can we
hawks.
just not
Great.
with the fucking Senator
Thank you.
Patty Murray? That's given fucking tic-tac-toe. God, I've had it with the fucking boomer women and men. The boomer men already. I already had it with them like 20 years ago. Boomer women, I'm done.
Everybody watch as this goes forward, because we will give
Yeah,
the
fucking
Republicans
Nancy.
a chance
Tic-tac-toe.
to reduce the increase to the debt and
Go
the deficit
fuck yourself, Nancy.
by peeling back just
Did you hear
tax
that
cuts
Trump
for the
said
greedy
that
billionaires.
TikTok has a buyer,
We
but he's
would be
going to tell us
voting
in 2
for
weeks?
working class tax cuts, I'm almost certain. We'll have a
So it'll
chance to
either
bring
come
into
tomorrow
stark
or
focus
never.
through our amendments what really matters
He's either
to
telling
the
us
folks on
tomorrow
the
or
other side of the
never.
aisle, and that is the tax cuts
Yeah,
for the
David,
super wealthy,
basically. In the
for
Senate.
billionaires, for
In
the
the Senate.
corporations that are offshoring jobs, and for the biggest polluters in the country. That's where their sweet spot is, and we will expose
Exactly,
that
2
through these
weeks. So
votes.
we focus on that and not the bill.
For those votes, we're not sure when they will start, because the Republicans are
Exactly,
redrafting
spooky.
provisions of this bill right now. That's how little time this Senate will have to actually know what's in this 1,000-page bill with all kinds of special deals tucked into it for various members. We will have little time to see, because they're still writing it. So those amendments that my colleague from Rhode Island mentioned, stay tuned. We're not sure if those amendments are going to start at 2 in the morning or if they'll start sometime later tomorrow, but stay tuned and pay attention, because you're going to find out who stands with families and who stands to hurt families in favor of helping billionaires. Thank you.
Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, thank you. I think it's really important, the discussion we had right now about the deficit and debt, but I want to talk a
He's
little
like
bit
if
more about
50
this
First Dates was
bill
actually never.
in general.
He's like if you went
know,
on 50
recent
First Dates with
AFF
him.
polling shows that this
That's what it is.
Republican big ugly betrayal bill is overwhelmingly unpopular. In fact, this thing is more underwater than the Titanic. Nearly 2
Oh, really?
in 3 Americans
Does he? You
view
found me
this
when we
bill
went down with the Titanic.
unfavorably. That goes up to nearly 3 in 4 when they
That
learn
was
it will
fun.
kick millions off their health insurance. And it goes up to nearly 4 in 5.
I
when
hope
they
TikTok
learn it
doesn't
will
go away.
choke
I've
off
become
funding
complacent
their
on this
local
whole
hospital.
fucking thing. If it
In
goes
other
away,
words,
I'm
the more the
fucked.
American
I'm
people
cooked.
hear
Chat.
about what is
Meta
actually
doesn't
in
pay.
this big ugly betrayal
Meta
bill,
doesn't pay.
the more they dislike it. So with that in mind, I want to be here today to say a little bit more about what is in the Republicans' latest version. Spoiler alert, it is still big. It is still ugly.
I'm on
and it is
YouTube.
an
I mean, I
absolute
live stream on
betrayal of the
Twitch. No one
people
watches me on
who
Twitch,
sent
really.
us
I've
here
got
to
one
fight
guy on
for them.
Twitch. Hi, Nathan.
The
If he's still in
Republican
here.
plan is still going to mean over 16 million people.
I'm on
losing
YouTube
health
and I post all my
as
videos on
patients
YouTube, but
kicked off their
it
ACA
barely
plans.
pays. I just don't make,
Kids
even when I
and
make,
families will get kicked
yeah,
off
well on
Medicaid.
Twitch and on YouTube,
Rural
I'm on
hospitals
horizontal right
are
now.
gonna
If you
be
want the
forced
full,
to shut
the
their
full
doors.
screen horizontal
The
and the full
Republican
chat,
plan is still
full
gonna
multi-chat.
mean more starving families. New red tape is going to cut people off from their SNAP benefits that they need to put food on the table. And it is going to take away kids' school meals. The Republican plan still rips away support from the people in this country who are struggling the most to give away billions
Yeah.
in tax breaks
Alligator,
to billionaires
Alcatraz.
who need help the least.
Wild.
In short, this latest version of Republicans' bill would still be one of the biggest transfers of wealth from the people at the bottom to the people at the top in our nation's history. When it comes to health care, this Republican abomination will cause millions of people to lose their insurance and see their costs.
I mean, the Dems know it's a
skyrocket
fucking lost cause
in
at this
one way or
point. You know what I
another.
mean?
It will create mountains of new paperwork and bureaucratic barriers that are positively meant to kick people off their Medicaid and ACA coverage. And there is new sabotage to the ACA healthcare markets, which will mean more people losing their affordable coverage. Meanwhile, there is nothing, a big fat zero, when it comes to renewing the tax credits Democrats passed to lower your health care costs. That's right. While Republicans are showering their billionaire donors in new tax breaks, they will not lift a finger.
I mean, still, you know,
to extend
harass
healthcare
your
tax credits that
GOP
are saving
reps and
millions
stuff.
of family thousands of dollars a year on health coverage. Instead, they're going to make sure
Riz,
people
stop.
lose health care coverage,
Riz.
including our seniors, people with disabilities, pregnant women, millions of patients who rely on Medicaid. And let's not forget, the cuts in their bill are going to shutter hospitals across the country, especially in our rural areas. Do you have Medicaid, Medicare, employer-sponsored coverage? Regardless, Republicans have some pretty bad news for you, because it hardly matters what insurance you're on when you don't have a hospital to get care anymore. In Washington State, we have 14 rural hospitals that are fighting to survive and would likely close under this bill.
No, but
Most
I got
of them in areas
some
represented by
ingredients to
Republicans,
make more. The only
Not to
problem is
mention we have
I'm on my
6
computer, so
rural labor and delivery
I have to
units
figure out
that
how
could
to
be
do
forced to close their
SM.
doors under this bill.
No, RTMP
You know what
server
Senate
or
Republicans did?
SRT server.
They made
Apparently, I
that
can set
problem
one up
worse.
with.
They put even more pressure on our rural hospitals. I'm telling you, this betrayal is getting bigger and uglier by the day. And this
Does anyone know how to
cannot
set
get
up an
lost.
Republicans RTMP server with
one of the
VLC
biggest
to like
healthcare
receive
providers in the
camera
country.
footage?
They want to defund Planned Parenthood. That is wildly
Start calling them right
that
now.
is wildly harmful and
They're at work.
wildly unpopular.
Someone is.
It would shutter at least
Look up their DC
200
office
health
phone
centers
number.
that
Start calling
provide
them.
a wide spectrum of
Yell
care,
at them
including
right now.
cancer screenings, pap smears, birth control for millions of women.
The Roblox server.
And let's
to
not
engage
forget,
the youth.
Republicans are cutting nutrition assistance too. This big, ugly betrayal would make one of the biggest cuts to SNAP in history. We are talking around a $200 billion cut over the next 10 years. Now, it should be obvious, but that
How
would be devastating for our
to
country and for
set
our kids' future.
up
And yet,
RTMP server.
Republicans are not giving up on taking dinner off the table, taking school lunch off kids' trays, all so they can shovel tax cuts at billionaires and wealthy corporations. And it is worth underscoring the new red tape in their bill is even targeted at some of our most vulnerable families because it expands work requirements to apply to seniors and parents with kids in school. Mr. President, when my dad, World War II veteran, got sick with multiple sclerosis, he lost his job. He lost his job. My mom was at home.
Okay.
7 kids she was raising. My dad lost his job, and they had to spend, my mom had to spend some time getting some new skills so she could go back to work and take care of our family. You know what, during that time? We had to rely on food stamps in my family to feed those 7 kids in my family. But under this Republican bill today, because neither of my parents had a job during those few months, my family would not be eligible for SNAP benefits. We would not have even gotten food on our table at the worst time in my family's life. This is wrong. Thanks to those food stamps, my family did get through that rough patch. And all 7 of us kids grew up to give back to our communities. Whether it's a firefighter, or a middle school teacher, or even here as the United States Senator.
Fire.
So I can't emphasize enough. Republicans want to cut families from SNAP and Medicaid programs that give people a hand up in hard times. Why? So they can give an enormous handout to the richest people and biggest companies in our country. Oh, and at the same time, they're making it harder to afford groceries and healthcare. I should mention, they are also gutting energy investments in a completely chaotic way that is all but guaranteed to drive away jobs and drive up energy costs for all of American families. And at the same time, in this bill, they're giving billionaires billions of dollars. Republicans are going to give students the short end of the stick. This big mess of a bill would tear away programs and protections that make it possible for many students to pursue a higher education. It eliminates Grad Plus loans. It cuts families off from Parent Plus loans. It punishes students who go into public service or a medical residency, and more. Meanwhile, they are tearing down the guardrails from gutting regulations that protect students whose universities commit fraud, to opening a Pandora's box for Pell Grants with a new loophole that will let low-quality programs suck up our taxpayer dollars. These changes are especially going to hurt students from low-income families and first-generation college students and our veterans. Some of them will have no way to go to college when Republicans take their support away. Some will be driven into predatory private loans they can't afford. And some will get lured into low-quality programs that take their money, waste taxpayer dollars, and leave the student worse off. And if that wasn't enough, if the Secretary of Education wanted to try and stop this kind of fraud and protect students, Republicans will leave them at about as much authority as a school hall monitor. Because in this bill, Republicans prevent any Secretary of Education from making regulations that carry added benefits for borrowers. And it hardly matters if that is a good impact, like saving students money or protecting taxpayer dollars from fraud or making higher education more accessible. Republicans are going to make problems worse and make fixing them even harder. Students in this country should be outraged. And I want to be perfectly clear about something. If Republicans charge ahead with this big, awful mess, which they seem intent on doing, they can kiss any last shred of credibility goodbye, as we just talked about, when it comes to pretending they care about balancing the budget or addressing the national debt. The idea was already laughable. For the entirety of the 21st century, the biggest driver of the national debt has been tax cuts that Republicans championed. But now, as we just talked about, they want to put at least $4 trillion, that is trillions with a T, on the national credit card. Why? So
I
they
know,
can shower
right,
the
Desi?
richest people on the planet with more money. And then they're pretending all the math works and it's kind of easy peasy. If they only just, they can do it if they kick people off health care or take enough meals away from kids or close enough hospitals.
Sorry, I'm
or
trying to
better
look up
still,
how to
use
set
some
up, like,
absurd
a-
accounting gimmick to pretend that billions of dollars in new tax cuts for their billionaire donors actually just don't cost anything. Well, I've got some bad news for Republicans. Your math is terrible, and so's this bill. This thing is very expensive.
Your math
and you
is
don't
terrible.
have to take
And so
my
is this
word
bill.
for it. Ask the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which just said the latest version of this bill will add $4 trillion, to the debt with just over the next 10 years. If Republicans want to ignore them, you can also ask the fiscal hawks at the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. They calculate that the House bill adds $5 trillion to our debt when you include interest payments and the cost of making temporary provisions in this bill permanent. And we are told the Senate bill is even less fiscally responsible. Everyone agrees this thing is not beautiful, but it is recklessly big, and it won't just increase the debt, it will blow it up. Mr. President, this may very well be the most expensive bill in history. I say may because Republicans are still planning changes. We have not yet gotten the final bill. They already cut out even more taxes for multinational corporations. SNAP benefits, they're still on the chopping block. Healthcare, still on the chopping block. In fact, they want to cut Medicaid even more painfully. We may not know how expensive the Republicans will be in the end, but we know who is paying for it. Paying for it is you, working families. And it is important for people to know, as bad as this bill is, Republicans were trying to make it even worse. Now, Democrats have been fighting them every step of the way, and we have notched a few important wins by challenging every single provision we possibly could under the Senate rules. So I want to talk about some of the things Democrats were successful in getting out. Because if Republicans had had their way, not only would this bill take away more food from our struggling families or shutter even more hospitals and kick even more people off their health insurance, it would have also sold off all of our public lands. And if instead of just slashing CFPB funding, it would have completely shuttered the doors of a very important federal watchdog that protects Americans from getting scammed. If Republicans had have had their way, this bill would make it easier to buy gun silencers, harder to get your earned income tax credit or pay off your student loan, and effectively impossible to get insurance plans on the marketplace that cover abortion care. If Republicans had had their way, this bill would have also given Trump more power to deny funding to our constituents on a whim and less power for the courts to stop him. We're talking about a whole smorgasbord of really awful, unpopular ideas and policies that would have hurt our families and weakened our democracy. Ideas that were this close to making it into this bill. But Republicans did not have their way. Democrats have been fighting back at every single step. We got those provisions tossed in the shredder, and we are still doing our darndest to send the rest of the bill to the shredder as well. Now, let's be clear. When we talk about how unpopular this bill is with the American people, the reason is simple. This bill polls like garbage because it is garbage. That's why it should go nowhere except a trash bin. Democrats are going to keep pushing back on this monstrosity with absolutely everything we've got at every step we can. We're not going to stand by as Republicans shutter hospitals so the richest people in the country can build another vacation home. We are not going to sit around and let Republicans kick millions of people off of their insurance and raise working families' premiums so corporate executives can get a bigger bonus.
Yeah.
And we are not going to be silent.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the House is set to
so they can help
pass it.
billionaires
They passed
fuel
something
up
very
their private
similar.
jets. We're going to keep speaking up. We're going to keep pushing back, and we're going to make sure everyone knows exactly what is going on here. This
I
bill
know,
is
right?
deeply
Yeah, I
unpopular,
agree. That's what I was
that
saying
much is
earlier.
clear. But if Republicans
I gotta
keep
find.
pushing for this
We gotta
disaster,
find the exact
buckle
like.
up, because
where's,
we are
like-
only going to keep getting louder and louder about how big this is, how ugly it is, and it's only going to get more.
Does anyone know how
unpopular
I
with
can
folks
set up
back
an
home
RTMP
as these
server for
provisions
free?
are enacted if this bill passes.
Or SRT server?
I'm pretty astounded by how far some Republicans are trying to stick their heads in the sand on this. One Republican senator told their concerned constituents, and I quote, "We're all going to die." Well, maybe that's a better name for the bill. At least it's more honest. Because when you take health care away from people, when you make it harder to get, when you make it harder to afford, when you close the only hospital for miles, yeah, you're right, people will die. You'd think my colleagues would show a bit more concern about that. Instead, that senator actually doubled down, and in a response video, she filmed walking through a cemetery. I don't know how you get out of touch that much to misunderstand this, but let me be clear about something to our Republicans. Whistling past the graveyard is a metaphor to stop ignoring dangers. It is not a literal messaging suggestion. And if you thought Republicans couldn't be any more dismissive to their own constituents, this week another Republican senator who was speaking about people voicing their concerns about these Medicaid cuts that said they will, quote, people will get over it. Mr. President, I have news for every one of my Republican colleagues.
Yeah, but I get
who is
fucking
trying
lost
to
in all
deny the
the
reality of this
GitHub
bill and pretend the fairy tales
shouldn't,
they are
but-
telling themselves are true. When someone's local hospital closes,
Do you know what
they
it's called?
don't
Is
get
it the
over
Mona one?
When someone's kid is kicked off health care, they do not get over it. And if Republicans don't want to take my word for it, they can listen to the doctor I spoke with who warned when patients go uninsured, they delay care, and it increases costs for everyone. Instead of paying $10 for diabetic medication, we'll pay $10,000 for an amputation. Or Republicans can actually read the countless letters I'm getting from my constituents, sharing their stories. Quote,
On this vote, the yeas are 47, the nays are 53, and the motion is not agreed to. Senator from Maine.
Mr. President, may I have order, please?
We have order in the chamber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I call up amendment number 2812 and ask that it be reported by number.
The clerk will report.
Senator from Maine, Ms. Collins, President, and amendment number 2812 to amendment number 2360.
Mr. President, my amendment would increase funding for the Rural Healthcare Provider Fund to $50 billion and expand the list of eligible providers to include not only rural hospitals, but also community health centers, nursing homes, ambulance services, skilled nursing facilities, and others. Rural providers, especially our
Okay, I'm
rural
downloading something now.
hospitals and nursing homes, are under
Susan
great financial
Collins.
strain right now, with many having recently closed
Be right back.
and others being
If anyone
at
wants to
risk
hop
of
up and
closing.
host this, well,
Mr.
I'm just
President,
reading
when
about
these
servers.
facilities
Are there
close
any
their
mods in here?
doors,
Is
the
God in
people they
here?
serve are often left behind without access to health care. This amendment would help keep them open and caring for those who live in these rural communities. The additional funding is fully offset through a modest increase in the top marginal tax rate, equal to the pre-2017 rate for individuals with income above $25 million and married couples with income above $50 million. I urge support for this amendment to provide the additional funding for rural and Medicaid providers who desperately need it.
President,
Senator from Oregon.
Mr. President and colleagues, here is how flawed this plan is. The danger Senate Republicans are causing for rural hospitals is so great, Republicans have had to create a rural hospital relief fund so they can look like they are fixing the problem they are causing. It is a Band-Aid on an amputation. It provides just a tiny fraction of the nearly $1 trillion in cuts the bill makes to Medicaid. It would be much more logical to simply not cut $1 trillion from Medicaid in the first place. This amendment doubles down on that flawed plan that's going to set rural hospitals adrift. I urge opposition to the amendment, and I yield back. Mr. President, I make a point of order that the pending measure violates Section 302F of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974.
Senator from Maine.
President, pursuant to Section 904 of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974, I move to waive and I ask for the yeas and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsor-Brooks.
Yeah, exactly, Crow.
Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks. Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Ms. Blunt Rochester, Mr. Booker.
Millions of dollars in new tax cuts for extraordinarily wealthy oil and gas companies, and $40 million for a Garden of Heroes, a sculptured garden to honor President Trump's favorite historical personalities. And at the same time, it slashes the budget for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which makes sure that shady payday lenders, mortgage lenders, and banks don't fleece American families. And in particular, the military division of the CFPB protects men and women in the uniform of the United States. We were able to pass an interest cap of 36% for active duty personnel. And that is going to be ignored because there's no one to enforce it. And we are going to see, as we have in the past, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardians exploited, systematically exploited by all those little automobile shops and payday lenders and everything else that surrounds every military fort base in this country. It's a tale as old as time. My Republican colleagues showering the rich with tax benefits and prioritizing favored industries and friends. President Bush joined with the Republican Congress to do that. Of course, I opposed it. Oh, by the way, when President Bush did that, we were projected to have, over the next 10 years, a multi-trillion-dollar surplus. Of course, this legislation will lead us to a multi-trillion-dollar deficit. And it's interesting because when I was younger, the Republicans all associated themselves with fiscal responsibility, balanced budgets, surpluses. That's not the case. President Trump exacerbated the situation in his first term by his grand giveaway. But this time, President Trump and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are depriving millions of Americans of their health care coverage to pay for it. They are intent on punishing the most vulnerable Americans in this bill, simply for the crime of being poor. In fact, in many cases, despite working very long hours and being poor. I came here to Congress and the Senate after serving my country in the U.S. Army, as the President did with great distinction in the United States Navy as a Navy SEAL. I came here to serve my constituents and improve the lives of average Americans. And I think most of my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans alike,
You think she'll actually vote with them?
same goal. And according to press reports, a few of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are starting to realize that this bill is going to do great damage to their constituents. One Republican colleague has warned that this bill could leave 600,000 of his constituents without health care coverage and blow a $38 billion hole in his state's budget. That would be a devastating effect. One of the other aspects of this attack on our health care system is there's some people that believe, well, Medicaid doesn't touch me. It certainly does. Because when you extract that much money from the health care system, what will private health insurance do? They'll raise their rates. Everyone will be paying more. And some won't be able to afford it. They'll have to go without coverage. And that is going to be a tragedy for this country. Now, knowing of the damage this bill is going to do, one must ask, why would anyone support this? But this legislation is more than just numbers. I've heard from countless Rhode Islanders who are concerned about these cuts. During meetings, in letters, when I bump into them at the grocery store or the pharmacy, they've been telling me about how Medicaid has helped them and their families. I've been meeting, for example, with Christina from Smithfield, Rhode Island, for many years. Her daughter, Lauren, was born with cystic fibrosis and has endured countless hospitalizations, procedures, medications, and other challenges as she navigates life with this disease. Christina, Lauren, and their family have private insurance, but Medicaid also helps cover the expenses not covered by private insurance for people with serious illnesses who are not able to work. When President Trump and congressional Republicans began proposing these cuts to Medicaid, Christina told me, and I quote, "Lauren was born with CF, a rare genetic progressive disease which affects her lungs, GI, and endocrine
Yeah, he's got
system.
a really soothing voice.
I had no idea we carried this gene. When Lauren was born, she spent a month in the hospital. We almost lost her. When she was 5, she contracted a germ that put her in the hospital for a month and almost killed her.
Oops.
Her lung function fell to 70%.
I'm
At
installing
13,
this mini
I
server.
thought she was going to die. Her hospital stays were every 3
See how it
months
goes.
for 2 weeks with IV treatments. Her lung function fell to 30%. With one of the medicines for CF, she was able to finally get her lung function back to 65% at 23 years old. She still suffers every day. Just trying to breathe is difficult. If she catches the common cold, it could put her in the hospital. She has had a hard time keeping weight on, and her GI is a disaster. She spent hours in the bathroom. She developed CF-related diabetes, which always puts her in danger. Every day is rigorous treatments and medications just to stay alive. It is with the help of the NIH and the FDA that she is still alive. Please do not make these cuts. If Medicaid is cut, when she is 26, 2 years from now, she will have no way to pay for all of her hospitalizations, medications, and treatments. Few could afford to keep her alive. It is this simple. Without Medicaid, she will die. We need your help. Carolina, from Central Falls, Rhode Island, shared similar concerns for her daughter. My daughter has special needs, and we rely on Medicaid for her needs. Not having Medicaid would create a sinkhole for us. People with profound autism need lifetime, 24/7 care. As you consider budget cuts, it is important to me, as your constituent, that you work to ensure that this vulnerable population has access to the critical supports that it needs to survive. I will be looking to you for your courage and leadership. Indeed, and now we're looking across the aisle for courage and leadership to reject this flawed bill. I received an email from one constituent, Wally, in Cranston, Rhode Island. She is a 71-year-old retiree on Medicare. Her husband is 72 with Alzheimer's disease, living in a nursing home under hospice care and relying on Medicaid for his health care. She wrote to me that she was, quote, terrified at all the cuts to program services that she and her husband so desperately rely on. Without Medicaid, she wonders if she or her husband would be able to continue receiving care. I also heard from Diane in Coventry, Rhode Island, whose daughter gets life-saving care through Medicaid. Diane said, Medicaid is important to me personally. Medicaid matters to me and my family. My 15-year-old daughter suffered a brain bleed and a stroke at the age of 5. It came out of nowhere and was very unexpected. She has spent a lot of time in the hospital, rehabilitation services, doctor's offices, appointments, etc. over the past almost 10 years. Medicaid allows her to be home and taken care of on a daily basis. Without Medicaid, she would not be able to receive hospital-level care at home. She wouldn't have a wheelchair or any other durable medical equipment. She wouldn't be able to get her life-saving medications or the nourishment she needs through her G-tube. Please, I urge you to save Medicaid, not only for my family, but for millions of others. All of our lives depend on it. Now, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle may say, we're not going to cut these people's Medicaid. We're just going after the fraudsters, the freeloaders who aren't working. Now, who exactly are these fraudsters and freeloaders? Is it the elderly patient who needs expensive nursing home care? Is it the child with a serious chronic health condition? Should we cut off these people's access to health care because they can't afford it?
Well, Dems are going to force them to
physically
sit through a
cannot
bunch of
afford it?
amendments. They're not
Or
going to let
because the
them just,
constant
they're going to
pace of
delay
the
it as
work
much as possible and
requirements
just
got lost in the
make them
shuffle?
stay up all night. if
Let's
they
be
can.
clear. If my colleagues were serious about eliminating fraud, they would be providing states with more resources to investigate questionable claims and bad actors. Medicaid coverage is not extravagant, it is a lifeline. If my colleagues were sincere and they claim that these cuts are about protecting the program, quote, for the people who need it the most, as the majority leader has claimed, then they would be investing the so-called savings back into Medicaid instead of blowing it on tax cuts for the well-off. Instead, this bill is cutting funding to states for Medicaid, and states will have no choice but to pick and choose who will get access to care. But don't take my word for it. The Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, CBO, estimates that this bill will cause nearly 17 million Americans to lose their health insurance. 17 million people. That's not fraud. It's just making it harder for people to get health care. On top of that, even if you're one of the lucky ones who gets to keep your Medicaid, will you still be able to get it? Nursing homes rely on Medicaid. More than 6 in 10 nursing home residents in Rhode Island are on Medicaid. As Medicaid funding is cut, what will nursing homes do? I imagine some will have to close their doors or dramatically reduce the number of beds. So you could be one of these fairly well-to-do Rhode Islanders trying to get mom in the Medicaid home, in the nursing home, I should say, and you're willing to pay, but if it's closed, or there's only 5 beds where there used to be 20, she's going to be where, in my generation, grandparents were, in the living room, in a hospital bed, being cared for, in those days, typically by your mother. So this approach to Medicaid is going to touch every aspect of American life. And the same can be said about the community health care centers. Medicaid makes up a huge portion of the operating budget for community health centers, which provide primary, dental, and behavioral care to more than 200,000 Rhode Islanders. That's roughly 1 in 5 Rhode Islanders. It's hard enough to find a doctor now. It will only get harder if a community health center closes its doors and thousands of patients don't have a doctor anymore. And where do all those patients end up when they can't get routine care? The emergency room. That means there will be lines out the door, and if you have a serious health event and need to get in, you better get used to waiting a long time. This is not how a health system is supposed to run. And in Rhode Island, our health system is already on the brink. People are just getting by. People are waiting in the hallways of ERs for a bed upstairs. People are spending days on the phone trying to find a
Nice,
doctor.
Casey. Good.
We should be making these things better, not worse. But again, Republicans' main priority seems not the physical or financial health of everyday Americans. is providing massive tax cuts to President Trump's billionaire and millionaire friends. There's certainly nothing wrong with being successful, and there's nothing wrong with wealth. That's something that has been part of the American dream since our beginning. But what it requires is opportunity. And one of the fundamental opportunities it requires is good health and good education. And what this bill will do is destroy our healthcare system and force the states to make dramatic cuts to the education system. We are shutting down opportunity in America while we enrich the wealthy elite. The American dream, as I believe it, is about the middle class and a government that's focused on them, not taking $1 trillion from Medicaid so Republicans can gift to those who've already benefited from many other gifts. Mr. President, let's put the enormity of this transfer to the wealthiest in perspective. There are about 128 million households in America. Yet somehow this bill gives the top 1/10 of 1% of households a $250,000 tax cut, a giveaway that's over 3 times larger than what the median American household makes in a year. When confronted with this point, Republicans consistently try to hide the ball. Middle and working class Americans are getting tax cuts too, they say. Who cares if the rich gets richer? Well, the Senate bill raises taxes on the lowest income Americans, the same families from whom Republicans are ripping away health care and other benefits. While we are voting on this bill without a full analysis of its impact on households, the Congressional Budget Office found that the House-passed version would take around $1,600 away from these lowest income households each year after accounting for tax changes and benefit cuts. And it's not just low-income Americans. Researchers at Penn's Wharton School of Business have found that most Americans lose money under the House bill in future years, too. I want to be crystal clear. We need to reform our tax care system. We need to make it fairer for working Americans, not just for the ultra-wealthy. We hear from people so often that government is broken.
It is
They're
sad.
right. Our tax system is unfair.
This is crazy.
But giving
I can't
the top
fucking believe we have so
1/10
many terrible
of
people in this
1%
country.
of Americans an extra $250,000 every year.
I'm so angry. I
is
just
not
want them
fixing
to, like,
government. It's just
I want them
adding
to
the
shoulder
sense
all
of
the
fairness
suffering that this is going to cause.
and
I
brokenness
see.
that so many citizens feel.
How are you?
We can do a bipartisan tax bill that is both fully paid for and that helps average Americans. In fact, we almost did that last summer when the House passed the tax bill 357 to 70 that would have extended the child tax credit and reinstated tax cuts for businesses without increasing the deficit. 48 bipartisan senators voted for that bill in this very chamber, but it was blocked because Republican leaders wanted to pass something like this bill before us today. My Republican colleagues have drafted a bill that is neither paid for nor helps most Americans.
I have
Worst of all,
little
they
to
have
no faith
chosen
in Susan
to
Collins.
take from the poor and the middle class and the
Little to
working
no
class
faith.
to give to billionaires. This bill is very bad policy. It's almost un-American if you believe that the essence of America, as expressed by one of our greatest presidents, Abraham Lincoln, was to give every person a fair chance in the race of life. This bill denies that chance to millions and millions of Americans while enhancing and filling the pockets of the wealthiest. And I oppose it. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Good.
Thank you. I'm honored to follow my colleague, Senator Reid, and he is absolutely right that this bill is almost un-American. In fact, I would say it is un-American because it is so destructive to the middle class, to health care, to education, to basic fairness and decency in our great country, the greatest country in the history of the world. It would balloon the debt and the deficit by $4 trillion, and yet my Republican colleagues have sought to disguise and hide that reprehensible pain and damage to the American system. It would cut Medicaid by $930 billion, which means billions in cuts for Connecticut, hundreds of thousands of Connecticut children and families off Medicaid, food nutrition shredded, and student loans decimated. These kinds of impacts on Connecticut are mirrored through the whole country. And the American people are beginning to get it. That's why this bill, the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, is
Oh, that's long
so
gone, Kat.
deeply unpopular. In fact, by 2 to
Also,
1
that was like never a
majority.
fucking thing. Americans are so obsessed with this label about being number one, greatest country ever. Da, da, da. It's like no other country. It's just that's a uniquely American obsession, self-described obsession.
Connecticut,
It's
but
fucking
for the whole
weird.
country and for Louisiana, where this measure, if it's passed, will mean that my colleagues from Louisiana are voting to kick roughly 250,000 people in their state off health insurance. They will be voting for a bill that could close 33 rural hospitals in their state alone and cost their state's health care providers $588 million for services that newly insured patients simply will not be able to pay back. Their state program would lose $4 billion. That's Louisiana alone in funding. These numbers are staggering. And they're the reason that every major health system in Louisiana is opposing this bill. Just yesterday, they sent a letter warning that cuts in this bill, and I'm quoting the Louisiana healthcare providers here, quote, would be historic in their devastation and warrant our shared advocacy to protect our patients and the care we provide them in hospitals and clinics. I could go on about Louisiana. I'm going to abbreviate my remarks and put my full statement in the record if there's no objection, Mr. President.
Without objection.
But this bill also reduces SNAP benefits for 206,000 Louisianans. It eliminates the benefit entirely for 94,000 of them. I want to see my colleagues from Louisiana go home and face their constituents, having cut the legs from SNAP and Medicaid programs and many other benefits. And in Utah, same tragic scenario unfolding in a state where 337,000 children and adults depend on Medicaid. Nearly half of all children in Utah are covered by Medicaid. 59% of nursing home residents. 60,000 people living in rural Utah communities covered by Medicaid. If this bill passes, at least 180,000 Utahns will lose health care coverage, and Utah's uninsured rate will increase by a staggering 67%. If this bill passes, 31,000 of the people in Utah could see their benefits slashed, and 13,000 would risk losing their benefits entirely. Now, I just want to say in conclusion, these numbers for Connecticut, for Louisiana, for Utah,
I wish I was a
for
dog.
the state of Washington, where my
The dog
wonderful
has
colleague,
no idea what's
Senator
going on in the
Cantwell,
world
will
right
be
now.
talking shortly. they're not just numbers. They are faces.
She's just dreaming on my floor.
Their lives, their children, who are just beginning
Her biggest concern
to be
are fireworks.
Americans. And their productivity, their contributions back to America will be hamstrung. Their lives will be financially handicapped and health-wise.
Shit, I think
They
I have
will
some.
be impaired as a result
I have
of
some
these
fucking.
irresponsible and reprehensible cuts. I couldn't be angrier about these kinds of cuts in programs done
Ugh.
only so that the ultra-wealthy will receive tax cuts. I'm willing to bet
I have Zoom calls in the morning. Well, I have
a lot of
Microsoft
those
Teams calls in the morning.
billionaires and millionaires
Actually,
would forego those tax
Which
benefits
is worse,
if
by the
they
way.
understood the consequences. But my Republican colleagues, who are in disarray at this moment, they can't come together on a program because they know how abhorrent its effects would be on their state, ought to listen to the people of America, not the ultra-wealthy. And the people are speaking in the polls. They're speaking through their elected
Oh, yeah?
representatives.
Nice.
And they are
the other day I
speaking
had
because
a
their
Teams call, but it was on primary day. And I was
won't
running
let
around
them
taking
support
water
a
to
bill that does such
a bunch of poll sites. And I was
abhorrent
like,
damage
okay, my call is at
to the
10:30. My
American
call is at
middle class,
10:30. My call is at
American way of
10:30.
life, American values.
And I was like, I'm going to call in from
And
the car.
I'm proud to stand here.
Dialed in at
I wish we weren't
10:28,
here
and I realized
going all night
the call
into
was
Monday
at
morning,
10.
but I'm proud to stand here with my colleagues, and I just wish my Republican colleagues were on the same sides of these issues, because they're going to go home and they'll have to face the children and families who will be hurt so deeply by this bill. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, I rise to ask my colleagues to turn down this legislation in front of us, to reject it, and instead work together on fiscal policy that would help us by growing our economy more successfully and not devastating our constituents. Before I start, I want to thank the presiding officer for speaking up about not selling public lands. I very much appreciate his voice in that debate, and it's critical that we were able to successfully get that out of this legislation. I want to work across the aisle to talk about these policies so that we can move our country forward in a competitive fashion. But I'm afraid that what we have in front of us is not the answer to what will make America competitive, particularly at a time when we are putting tariffs on American imported products, when we are basically getting into a trade war, and when we are devastating what I think is the underpinning of the economy of today, that is an information age, innovation economy, and here we are devastating all of our investments in NIH and NSF and in the competitiveness that we just implemented in the IRA and the CHIPS and Science Act that is making us the envy of countries around the world for innovation. We do have great capital markets, and those capital markets help us innovate. And I think some of my colleagues think, well, we have a promise to families here to give them a tax break, and while many of us would support that, you're asking us also to give tax breaks to big corporations before they can get their tax break. And that we don't like. We don't like it because it raises the cost on everybody, and that cost for middle class and lower income people will be devastating, particularly at a time when we continue with this tariff policy. This bill would make the entire healthcare system less responsive and more expensive for everyone by dismantling Medicaid and shifting more of the cost burden onto states and threatening the very existence of rural hospital. This bill also sells spectrum out from under our national defense and safety agencies and forces states to choose between protecting their citizens from dangerous AI or providing broadband service. And it just gives away big breaks to companies like Meta, that's Facebook, or Google, who I'm sure at this point in time don't really need that additional tax break. Clearly, though, the most egregious and certainly most destructive part of the bill of this reconciliation is the changes to health care. The fact that 17 million people will be uninsured and raise the cost on everyone. This is from the Congressional Budget Office. We don't need to be raising healthcare costs on our constituents. The CBO analysis revealed that hasty negotiated updates by Republicans discussed on behind closed doors early Saturday morning added that $130 billion in Medicaid cuts to the bill. That's a whopping $930 billion in total Medicaid cuts. That is how CBO got to this number of 17 million people. The challenge is nobody marked up a bill in committee. Nobody even had a hearing where somebody presented this information. No, this is all being changed on a daily basis, and everybody's trying to catch up. But what we're really trying to do is fight for our constituents and make sure that we know the impacts. The impacts of these 17 million people will be severe cuts felt in every corner of the United States. State governments will be the first to feel this tsunami of cuts. And unlike the federal government, they must balance their budget, so they can't borrow the money to make up for the deficit. In our state, the state of Washington, our governor and legislators have to grapple with an estimated $3 billion shortfall that this will bring to them as a result of this many people losing coverage. Yesterday, I held a virtual press conference with a group of Republican state representatives. A Republican Utah state representative who, Ray Ward,
We don't have to watch it the whole time.
happens to be a physician, warned that these
If you do want to keep watching, this is on C-SPAN.
deficit per year in
So you
his
can just
state
go
of
to
Utah.
cspan.org
That budget
or
shortfall
whatever.
forces his state government to make some
And
very difficult
yeah,
decisions.
up here,
They have to decide
top
whether to
right
cut reimbursement
is the
to providers,
live
cut medical services,
feed. Just
cut
so
more
if you
people
click in
off the
there,
rolls, or make
hope it goes.
drastic
It's been going
measures
on for days,
like
Rafa. It's
increasing
been going on for
everyone's
days, but it's
taxes.
reaching an end.
Kevin Leonard and Steve Hobbs, one of them is the executive director of the Association
Yeah,
of County
if you do click
Commissioners
in
of
to
North
watch it on
Carolina,
C-SPAN,
and
just
the
note
other,
this was earlier today, and this upper right thing is the live feed from the floor. And every once in a while, this gets like, this will get big whenever there's some actual activity in there. They put the speeches on, otherwise it would just be silent the whole time.
is that services like behavioral
Anyway.
treatment will now have to be provided through the jails.
Be well, my
instead of
dear.
medical setting.
I'll
Our own
try to.
peninsula health expert
Hopefully, I
who was
won't
on
be
the
like in a
call
Teams meeting when
basically said that in their region of our state,
when we figure out what
this could
happens
be
with
as
this
much
bill
as a
tomorrow.
25 to 45% cut in behavioral health.
Knock on wood.
So that's what happens when you cut people off of Medicaid. The amount of money, since Medicaid is $1 in $5 is a Medicaid dollar, you're going to take that much out of the
Alright, guys.
system.
Good night.
These people do
Love
not
ya.
operate on wild, profitable margins,
Sweet dreams.
oftentimes barely breaking even, or in behavioral